right, welcome. It is a late night stream, very impromptu. It is so impromptu that this is probably the crappiest thumb I think I've ever did ever, and my thumbs are pretty bad to begin with. Yeah, this thumb sucks, but I don't even care because it's like 11 o'clock or something, and I just decided to do the stream. It was okay. So let me give you a little backstory. Earlier this morning, before I had my full day. I was over in Jim Bob's uh, video. Jim Bob was doing a review of my review of his arguments against atheism, and one of the things that he had brought up was the logical problem of evil. And I did a review, and I think that he kept migrating from the logical problem of evil to the evidential problem of evil. And in my humble opinion, take it for whatever it's worth, I don't think he understands the difference. I really don't. I don't think he understands any of this stuff. But he's very, he's cordial, and it's all friendly jab. So nothing against Jim Bob whatsoever. This is not to attack him personally at all. It's just that I really don't think he understands these topics, and so I wanted to kind of go into what was, a little bit frustrating in a kind of a playful kind of way, because you go into the Lion's Den, right? You go into the chat, and you're going to be you're instantly going to be vilified. You're going to have people throwing pins and arrows at your way, and that's fine. It's to be expected, no big deal. But there was some people that did go a little bit across the line. You start threatening or insulting, and I just block anymore. I don't have any kind of patience for it. It just doesn't elevate the discussion. But Jim Bob has always been civil, but I do charge him with sophistry, and I don't know if he knows what that word means or not. He changes the word meanings to everything, and this is really kind of strange. And what I mean by word meanings is that these are normative usages that if you want to go learn about these subjects in the literature, that they generally have a general usage. Now, that doesn't mean that every author uses them the same way. That doesn't mean that they don't have nuance or sense. It just means that there's general understanding when you have the logical or evidential problem of evil, what is meant by certain words. And now his arguments are like, what does it mean? What does this mean? This and that. And when you start talking about natural evils in the logical problem of evil, I just don't think that you're understanding either one of them. So let me kind of just dive into that. I got Brandon in here. The link to join is in the Hi, Brandon, in the live chat. So come on in if you want. It's an open panel. I won't be on camera. And I don't have my coffee. All I got is water right now. But Brandon was talking about this before I hit go live. So maybe I'll just dive into it. So anyways, the two problems that were being discussed, the logical problem of evil is a problem where all the premises in a given argument cannot be true at the same time. And to assail that, you need to have a defense of which premise, do you attack. But the evidential problem of evil, which he keeps, again, migrating over, has to do with two types of evils: the moral evil and the natural evil. And these things mean something in that argument. They have a specific connotation. And to assail the argument, you can't just go, well, your version of evil and my version of evil are not the same thing. It's not the Christian version. That doesn't attack the argument. That has nothing to do with the argument. You could use any other usage or definition you want, but that doesn't attack the argument using the definition given. And I don't think Jim Bob understands that. So Brandon was asking, why don't you just ask a question, and then I'll dive into it.
I don't get that. Natural evil, it makes sense, but I thought evil usually meant that there was some kind of fault involved or blame. I don't know. I don't understand this natural evil thing without like something being. I don't know. I don't get it. So
well,
maybe help me out.
I described it, and this is how it's generally described in again the literature is dealing with intentionality. Intention. So, and he kept on saying that I was saying that hurricanes and toothaches have intentionality, and I just asked him earlier. I said, hey, where do you get those two references from, hurricanes and toothaches, right? And he said he just kind of came up with them, which is fine. I do believe him, but it's just ironic that hurricanes and toothaches are two of the canonical paradigmatic usages of what they mean, or examples of natural evils. There's toothaches, hurricanes, and stubbing toe, maybe tornadoes. But generally, hurricanes and toothaches are generally the paradigmatic examples of what they mean by natural evil. And so it's kind of funny that those are the two he just randomly came up with, but that's the two that you'll see in the literature: hurricanes and toothaches. And I was trying to explain that there's an intentionality between moral agents for moral evils, but there's no intentionality for natural evils. And again, I'm in the live chat, and so it's very difficult to express these concepts. These are not easy concepts to wrap your head around, and this is the advantage that the creationist or the sophist or the the philosophy person doing precept or whatever. This is where they have an advantage because they're just obfuscating, and then they project it onto the other person. And I even asked him though. I said, "Hey, look, are you saying that I don't have any understanding of these topics?" And he's like, no, you understand them. I'm like, okay, then let me explain them the way that I understand them as they are understood in the literature. And then if you want to assail those, go ahead. But just changing the definitions that are used doesn't assail the argument. And so to answer your question, the canonical definition that's used in the evidential problem of evil comes from William Rowe. And the way he defines it is this, and I'm going to read this straight from the source here. Ready? There exist instances of intense suffering which an omnipotent, omniscient being could have prevented without thereby losing some greater good or permitting some evil quality, bad or worse. Yes. I'm basically responding to his live. And what Rowe means by this is that what evil is, the evidence for the evidential problem evil is that there could have been a possible world that God could have instantiated or actualized where there could have been a lessering of suffering without any kind of distraction to his grand plan or anything like that. Something could have been prevented. And again, like stubbing of the toe, I always bring up. If I live my life stubbing my toe 50 times, or if I live my life stubbing my toe 49 times, why does it matter? What is there to gain by that? Because one of the theodicies for the problem of evil is the soul building theodicy, that we are here to learn something, to experience something, to experience suffering of some kind. But what is learned by me stubbing my toe one more time, than a possible world where I did stub my toe 50 times? And so the distinction to be made is that natural evils are these state of affairs in the universe, in this. Whoa, are you okay? Okay.
What, me?
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, you sound like your mic was having a hurricane of its own.
Oh.
Okay. So natural evils are basically state of affairs that don't result from any kind of intentional states or negligence of moral agents or dereliction of some kind of duty for a deontological approach. It's not due to negligence. It's not due to free will. These things do not have free will. But so a natural evil, or it's called a gratuitous evil, in the evidential problem of evil, is something that doesn't result from intentional states, which is basically intentional state is I think this, I believe that, I want this, I hate that. Those are intentional verbs, meaning that something is doing the verb. So if I say I believe X, that's an intentional verb because that's saying that I as the agent believe something. I'm doing something. Okay. So that's what a natural or gratuitous evil is. And just redefining that to say, oh, well, that's not a Christian version, it doesn't do anything to the argument. It doesn't change anything. But the other type of evil that exists is a moral evil. And moral evils are things that are done because of moral agents and intentional states. And he had asked, well, what's the difference between a lion eating, a gazelle or an elk or whatever, as opposed to a hurricane? Because a hurricane has, again, these intentional states. A lion, right? The tooth and claw thing of nature, he's not an agent of moral consideration. He doesn't understand right from wrong. He's going on instinct, and so there's no moral impermissibilities there. Now, some could argue it's just evil in general, and some have argued that even the whole setup of predation is some kind of evil out there, and you could argue that it doesn't matter whether you do or don't or accept it or not. It can be argued, but even what's his name? Oh my goodness, I forget his name. There's a rights activist out there, and I can't think of his name right now, but even he admits that he doesn't see animals doing evil because, again, they're not agents of moral consideration. They don't understand right from wrong. We do because we are sapient and sentient beings, but they're not. And so there's a huge distinction to be made there. And so the evidential problem of evil really deals with why is there natural evil at all? If God could have intervened and made it less suffering, why did he? Why did he want the amount of suffering we have? That's what it means by natural evil. Does that make sense so far?
Well, the animal thing is weird because there are some animals that have their own moral systems and stuff. Collective behavior is seen in animals. So, I mean, there
No, I
are
agree.
animals
I
that do
agree.
have a moral system.
No, I agree. I think that they do, but it's
Mm.
not consciousness. It's not like they have a deep, profound
Mm.
understanding. But they do. I think they do have an understanding of a basic right from wrong. Some of them do, right? We know that a lot of them do have higher cognitive functions.
Yeah, they know that doing something is wrong, so they correct that behavior. Consciously do. What do you mean by consciously doing it? I mean,
Well, because okay, so we are sentient. They're sentient, meaning that we have the ability to think, experience, have qualia, if you want to go that route, or basically feel or perceive something. A sentient being is something that has sense perception. But a sapient being
mm,
is somebody who has the ability to understand their reality and utilize it in some kind of logical, coherent, critical thinking, being wise, the proclivity for intelligence. So we are both sapient and sentient. A plant is sentient in the fact that they experience, but they're not sapient, right?
mm.
They don't understand self awareness. But some
Well,
animals do have a minor degree of self awareness. I can't do anything about
mm.
the volumes because I'm on StreamYard. So he's really loud because he has a really loud mic and he eats it. So I
Oh,
can't
well,
just
I'm on my phone right now, so I
all
guess
right.
that's
Yeah,
a
that's not
reason.
good. Yeah, you're not home.
Well, no, I'm home, but I went on my phone. Maybe I should switch to my laptop.
If you
I'll
want, either or.
Yeah, I'll switch to my laptop. I'll be back.
Okay. All right, I can just talk about the stuff. So one of the things I was talking about was for natural evils or just evils in general is horrific evils. And horrific evils are evils that are just not, bad or um, really bad. They're to an extreme that whether you have to use the word evil. We don't have to, I shouldn't say that, but people choose to use the word evil because it has the sense of something more than just wrong or bad. Now, some have argued that they shouldn't use the word evil. Why? Because mostly because of I would say overtones of supernaturalism. Because there's a there's a throwback of evil to days where it meant supernaturalism, right? Demons, satanic possession, things of that nature. And so some people have argued that we probably shouldn't even use the word evil. And that's kind of what I think maybe Jim Bob was even getting at. In fact, he changed the syllogism to suffering rather than evil. And I said that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to fault him too much for it. But the problem with evil is evil, not suffering. But I knew what he was getting at, and he had messaged me before on it. I said, "Yeah, it's fine." But he seems to be okay. There is actually a term. Okay, it's called was evil skeptics. Evil skeptic. There's evil skeptic and evil revivalist. And evil skeptic believes that we shouldn't be even using the term evil. The evil revivalist says no. We need something. We need some term to connotate and express what something would be that is just horrifyingly evil, right? And you can all think of examples of what's horrifyingly evil in your own way, but it's a term to express that, and that's what I think. I would be considered an evil revivalist. I do use the term evil. Um, Big Boss says I can't listen to Jim Bob and Andrew. They're so sure about stuff we can't know. Oh, absolutely. I'm just telling you right now, they are both very, very cocksure to say the least, especially Jim Bob, very cocksure. And it's funny because I keep defaulting back to math, and I don't think he understands why I do that. If you don't understand basic math and logic to where you can look at something that has an objectively true fact of the matter, that could be proven using mathematics, and you have to go, well, mathematics doesn't do this, and it's really just your axioms or blah blah blah. Then I think that you're not doing critical thinking at that point. You're doing sophistry because now I got to echo. Go back to your phone.
Oh,
Yeah, go back to your phone.
okay. I'm using another mic. Hold on. I'll
Okay.
switch to another mic. Hold on.
Okay. Um, and so this is why I constantly harp on that 0.99 repeating equals 1. The reason being is because that is something that anybody who takes math has to prove at some point in time, probably. If you take a calculus course, if you take a real analysis course, you have to prove that equality. And if you deny mathematical proofs, then how are you going to be considered a critical thinker? That makes no sense to me. These are objective facts. These are maths. It's no. If you deny 1 + 1 = 2, how are you a critical thinker? There's no difference in my mind denying 1 + 1 = 2 as it is saying 0.99 repeating plus 0.99 repeating equals 2. It's the same thing. There is no difference. They're mathematically 100% exactly the same. It's just using a different notation. That's it. And so what Jim Bob doesn't understand is he's denying basic facts of reality. And if that's the case, then why would I trust you for anything that's subjective? This is what I think leads people down the path to young earth creationism and flat earth, because they don't have the critical mindset that they think they have. And then they project it onto anybody else, and they have to use this argumentium ad assertion that they're just right and everybody else is wrong. This is why I find that people that don't really want to learn the philosophy, people that really don't want to learn math, they just tend to be very much into things like creationism, flat earth, and presuppositional argumentation, which is funny, by the way, because now are you back on your phone?
No, I switched mics.
No, so you got a little background noise. Go back to your phone. That was so much better. Sorry, I don't know what it is about your setup, man. You get a lot of background noise always. I'd rather have you on the phone.
Why? Because there's nothing going on here. Nothing at all. It's just my mic. There's not even any ambient noise going on.
I think it's
That's weird.
Could be a computer fan. I don't know. If the outside doesn't hear it, I'm fine. Yeah. Can the outside hear
Maybe.
his speaker? His fan?
I don't know. It's
Well, let's see if the outside does. I can hear it, but it's very low. It should be okay. So we'll ask them. But as I was saying, if you deny 1 + 1 = 2, how is that any different than denying 0.99 repeating plus 0.99 repeating equals 2? Right? It's the same exact thing. So that's why I harp on that, because he doesn't understand. Then he just talks about, well, it's infinity this and that. Well, look, he's never had an experience with dealing with limits of sequences or summations or partial sums or calculus level mathematics, and so there's an incredulity there, right? Because he doesn't understand it well enough. Let's say it's gone. That's not sound. You guys hear the difference? It's super quiet when he's either muted or not on his laptop. So I think it's this fan problem. But I'd rather have him go back to phone. It was lesser volume, but it was much more quiet in the background. That background noise makes it very difficult to think. But anyways, Big Boss. By the way, Big Boss, come on in. The link to the join is up there if you want to come on in. But yeah, very cocksure. And of course, that feeds into the audience thing. Now, Andrew, like I said, I don't listen to Andrew that much on a lot of stuff. His things that he talks about are way over my head when it comes to these social, political, patriarchy, and all that stuff. I don't get any of that. But I don't really watch his argument style, so I don't know. They came by the other night, but I didn't have the ability to bring them in really easily. I was going to try to toward the end, but it already got late. It was an hour and 45 minutes already, and I try to keep my videos down to 90 minutes, give or take, anywhere between an hour and 2 hours. I just find them more easily digestible, and I just think that they're more easily watched. And so going back to the the evil revivalist and the evil skeptics, I tend to use the word evil, and I think it's appropriate to use the word evil. But of course, the evil skeptic is just like, well, what is evil? I think he tends to what's called the privation of good. That evil is just the lack of good, and there's some problems with that usage. Is it out there? Sure, of course, there's a very common usage of the term evil, but there are, kind of there's some problems with that usage because one, it doesn't explain natural evils, and it doesn't explain why God created a world where he couldn't have removed that privation of good. He could have just made it all good. Sure, privation of evil is a theodicy against the evidential problem of evil, but as you'll read, it's what's called a partial theodicy because it doesn't explain why God didn't create a world where he could have had all good in that privation. Why was there privation to begin with? It's kind of what's called a Neoplatonic view that evil is a privation or negation of good. And there's also another view called what is it? What is it called? Thinking here. Manichaeism. Yeah. Manichaeism. Manichaeism is this position where there's these two modes of evil and good. So it's kind of like a modal spectrum, bimodal spectrum. And so there's two universal things out there. There's this ultimate good and this ultimate evil. And so Manichaeism believes in this dualist type cosmology, that there's this major struggle that's going on for infinity between this maximally evil and maximally good beings. And somebody had messaged me the other day, Kyle Alexander, who does philosophy, had messaged me the other day, and he said, "Hey, Steve, if Pennywise the Clown existed, would it refute theism?" And at first it was a weird question. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. But then I was like, wow, that actually, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, there's something to be said for that, because Pennywise the Clown was in theory this eternal being that was the epitome of evil. I mean, there was just nothing good about Pennywise the Clown. He was pure evil. He would have been this ultimate evil struggle between good and bad, right? And so in a Manichaeism viewpoint, I see, but here's the thing. I was like, but does it negate theism, or does it actually give credence to it, that there's some omnipotent being out there that's all good, that's antithetical to that evil being? So I really had to think about it. I was like, well, how would this affect theism? But then I thought about it. I was like, well, wait a minute. If this being Pennywise the Clown was the ultimate evil in that regard, then what would be he would be indistinguishable from Satan. But the narrative for the Christian literature for the fall is Satan, and so it would definitely go against the Christian narrative as far as the mythos. But it actually, I think, would make sense from the Manichaeism point of view, that there's these two diametrically opposite forces. So, but going back into the evil stuff, the types of evil, they go into these what's called theodicies, like I said. And theodicies, there's a whole bunch of theodicies to get around the natural evil. And his theodicy was basically, what is evil? And he kept asking that. I kept defining evil, Rowe's definition. And that's not how you argue against the evidential problem of evil. You can argue privation of good, which is the Neoplatonic version. You can argue even for Mysterianism, that we can't understand God's plans. You can do it by coherentism, that evil is just a way that we can exist in some kind of grand plan for God, that we can become one with the universe, or understand the universe, or we're just stuck in a great big battle between good and evil. That'd been in the Manichaeanism. Or you could just throw your hands up in the air. There is a theodicy called pious rationalism. And pious rationalism is basically, we are stupid. We cannot understand the mind of God. And so we just have to just bite the bullet on it. I would say pious rationalism and pious fideism are positions where we're biting the bullet when we recognize our own epistemic limitations. We can't understand even what evil is, but we have to either, one, rationalize there's a reason for it. There's a reason why God made things the way they are, or we just do it by faith. Thus, pious rationalism or pious fideism. Anasfrida says, Steve, the other day with Jim Bob, your sound was perfect. Well balanced, clear, and acoustic profile just perfect. This morning, you're a bit muffled and muggy, and Brandon was mouth loud. Oh, because that's because I'm on StreamYards right now. Right? StreamYard has a different audio setup than OBS. OBS, I can have compressor and gain and noise suppression, but I don't have any of that running here. But my mic is not overdriving. I can kick up my gain a little bit. Hang on 1 sec. Testing 1, 2. Oh, wait a minute. Why is my? Oh, that's too high. Ooh, that's too high. Audio. I'm trying not to overdrive it. There we go. So I'm. Oh, that's overdriving. That's overdriving. Down. Turn down. All right. So my gain right there. How about that, Anasfrida? I literally adjusted my pre-gain. So does that make a big difference? I still think I'm overdriving it a little bit, but I'm trying to speak away from the mic. But is this a little bit better with my preamp higher? It is kind of touching the red, but I don't want to overdrive my mic because then it really sounds bad. So is that better right there? Or do I need to turn it down a little bit? I can see it turning red a little bit. I don't like overdriving. Let me turn it down a little bit. All right. Just not as clear the other day. Okay, yeah, and that's probably because I am on StreamYards. I mean, I can talk more into the mic like this. Do you like it like this, or do you like it like this? How do you like it? Tell me how you like it, Anasfrida. Do you like it like this? Hey, you know what? Maybe I should start doing that. My roommate listens to this one guy. I don't remember his name, but he basically does sexy readings of materials, and he's got a huge following. Women just love him, and it's all just smut talk. A bit too close. Yeah, I like it like this. This is where I'm comfortable talking from, where in position to my mic. But maybe I should start talking real. Let's see here. Like, how do you like it, Anasfrida? Tell me how much. Yeah, it's not, it doesn't work for me. But then again, huh? Maybe who knows? You know, tell me what you want. Tell me what you want. Anybody know the name of that other band that sang that? Tell me what you want. Yes, this is the Sexy Time Cult. Yes. This is how we indoctrinate people into the atheist sex cult. We go late night lives and we just start talking to them like this. But okay, so anyways, there's the other argument, the other theodicy that I've seen is it's just basically a non-existent theodicy, and when I don't mean it does exist, but the theodicy is called non-existent theodicy, that evil just doesn't exist, and that would be the evil skeptic point of view, that there's no such thing as even evil, and I think that he was trying to run that. Jim Bob was trying to run that, but the problem with that is he's Christian and Christians accept evil, but he will argue that his version of evil isn't the same as what's utilized in the evidence for problem evil, which is not it's not a counter argument. And what does he mean by evil? Except that he just means privation of good, but that doesn't assail the argument, because privation of good as a theodicy for the evidence for problem evil doesn't resolve the evidence for problem evil, because God could have made a possible world where the lack of evil is filled with good if he wanted to have. That's the problem. You have to think these things through. And so, yes, the privatization of evil would resolve that if God could have not done it the other way. But there's no logical reason why God could not have done it a different way. And that's the problem. But the term theodicy comes from Leibniz, and I think it's from theos and I think is it dike, which means righteousness, if I'm not mistaken. Theos means God, but deity or dike means righteous, if I remember. But basically the Odyssey is different from the defense. The defense is how you show that the system for the logical problem of evil is consistent. That's how you do a defense on the logical problem of evil. The theodicy is a way to justify why there's evil and that God exists. Why does God allow evil? That's the theodicy. And just by changing definitions of that's used for that particular argument by Rowe, doesn't assail that argument. I mean, we could get into the nuances, what is meant by all good, all powerful, all knowing, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. And there is some nuance on those terms, and that's perfectly fine. You can do that. You can attack premise one of the logical problem of evil by the nuances, because those are not specifically defined. But the evil in the evidential problem of evil is specifically defined. That's the whole argument. Given this definition, this is what follows from it. I mean, it is, and it's prescriptive. I hate to say it, but it is a prescriptive. You'll see it defined prescriptively by Roe, that there exists instances of intense suffering which an omnipotent, omniscient being could have prevented without thereby losing some greater good or permitting some evil equally bad or worse. Some evil equal bad, or permitting some equally evil that's bad or worse. So God could have intervened. He could have made something different. And it was Tracy Harris from the Atheist Experience who said this. And again, I'm no fan of the Atheist Experience. I think it's, it was entertaining for what it was back in the day. And I thought they had a much better lineup back in the day, 10 years ago. Now it's just all, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Atheism is lack of belief, laughing, mocking. It's not what it was years ago when they had, Russell Glazer, they had Tracy Harris, they had Jen Peoples. Those were some good shows. And even with Matt Dillahunty, those were some good shows. But as Tracy Harris had said, the difference between your God and me is that when I see a child suffering, and using the R word, I would intervene. And she makes a great point. That is one thing that I really thought, yeah, that actually really does capture what it means to the evidential problem evil is why does God allow evil? Why does God allow these things to happen? If you have the power to stop things, even as a moral agent, right? If I have the power to prevent harm to a child, I'm going to exercise my ability to prevent that. And I'm not even an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent being. I still have the ability to do what I can as a moral agent to make the decision to prevent harm to a child. Yet God doesn't seem to do that. So why not? Right? Awesome says, what is logical is that God would have done some way, and that way would have been reality. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing with possible world theory, right? If these counterfactuals are such that God could have done something differently, why didn't he? You can't just say, well, that's because this God wanted that way. Sure, I mean, you can default to these pious rationalism and pious fideism, but that doesn't resolve the problem. I think that's just saying, hey, look, we can't understand that the God works in mysterious ways approach, right? And you want to take that and you want to think that resolves the problem. That's fine for you. You no longer to you have the issue, right? If you just say God works in mysterious ways, who knows? Okay, I'm not going to fault you for it, right? I'm not, but I think there's more to be discussed on that to really suss out why God allows these types of sufferings, especially the horrific sufferings. Because Jim Bob was arguing, well, what about toothache, right? And is a toothache evil? Well, again, there's a lot to do with the degree of the pain and suffering. Pain, some people like pain, right? And pain can be good for us in some ways. It lets the body know that something worse can happen, right? So a minor pain or discomfort could be considered a minor evil, or minor pain that's not pleasurable, even if it produces endorphins. But when it goes to suffering, when it goes to beyond the reason why pain is biologically necessary for a being such as us to prevent greater harm, that God could not have done that in some other ways. There's no reason why pure suffering should exist for pain, genetic, congenital, sickness. Those are things that just are not needed to, in a biological sense, to warn us of a greater harm, right? A quick pain to pull our arm away from something that's hot, or a hand away from something that's hot, understandable. At least, it still may be considered to be a natural evil because it hurts, but it's to reduce a greater pain. But it still would be considered, some kind of natural evil. So again, these are very nuanced topics, and I think that Jim Bob doesn't get into the nuance. He doesn't read any of the literature because he admitted that he just doesn't care. He's like, why does it matter in the literature? I'm super smart, and I'm just going to sail up doing this. But I talked to some friends of mine, and nobody gets it. No, all the philosophy people I've listened to, that have talked to Jim Bob. I mean, even Dr. Malpass was. I'm pretty sure it was Malpass that was watching something by them. Yeah, I was. He was Myth Vision. Derek from Myth Vision was talking to Jim Bob and Andrew, if I'm not mistaken. I did not watch it, but I did watch the interview that Derek and Malpass had. And, Dr. Malpass was not impressed. Thought it was very sophomoric, I should say. And then there was a doctor that was in there that was talking to Derek saying, these are guys that just, they don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying that I do. I don't want to put that out there. Look, I mean, because they're like, oh, that somebody has a couple of philosophy courses, and I'm not a philosopher. I am 100% an armchair person in philosophy. I took very few philosophy stuff in college, and phenomenological fallacies and stuff like that. But all in all, I have no real formal education in philosophy. Everything I've learned over the last 10 years was self-read. But I think as a layperson, I've pretty much got a basic handle on a lot of these topics. And so when I do discuss them with philosophy friends, they're not going, gee, Steve, you're just a complete idiot. Because I do read the literature on it. I do read what Roe wrote on it. I do read what Pat Plantinga has written. I did read his Theodicy. I did read his defense. I have read what Anselm, for the omniqualities. And I think that's important if you're going to be talking about these topics, what the uses of these terms are, and not just say, oh well, I'm not using that. I'm using the Christian version of evil, which I don't even know what that would mean. But these words do have a lot of uses in the literature. I mean, even if you look at Kant's version is way different of evil. I mean, he really does try to make it into a non-supernatural type thing, because back in his day, of course, they believed in supernatural and these demons and divine beings and things of that nature, and they still do to the day. But back then it was a lot more, and so Kant's version of evil was trying to put out there, we are free will beings. We are beings that have an inclination toward to be not evil, or I guess good. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. His Kant's version was we had an inclination to be evil. Yeah. So that would be a moral evil, people that do morally impermissible things, which again God could have given us free will to do. That is one of the theodicies. God gave us free will, okay, but he didn't have to give us free will where we had to make decisions between good and evil. He could have given us free will just where it's decisions where they be all good. And even though that seems to limit free will, it's still logically possible. It's still an element of free will there. Awesome says, yeah, Jim Bob has a show to run, income to make, yada yada yada. You know the drill. I don't think it's monetarily based. I don't think it's for income. I just think Jim Bob watched some stuff on Precept, maybe looked at some Von Til or some Bonson or something, and said, oh, this is how you argue against atheists. And he takes the approach that atheism, doesn't have any kind of leg to stand on. It's a very dishonest approach. I've said it before. Presuppositional argumentation is the most dishonest approach to a dialectic possible, I think. And then he argued something that's even worse about that. I've heard Jim Bob argue that everybody has presuppositions, so therefore everybody is a presuppositionalist apologist. Everybody's a preceptor. No, that's not how it works. Again, Jim Bob loves to make up these stipulative usages of terms, which you can do, but you can't apply them to the literature out there. You can't say, oh, look, I'm going to use this word in a completely different way for that specific argument that's out there, because now you're not assailing that argument. So you can't just say anybody who uses a precept is a presuppositionalist. That's not what it means. A presuppositionalist is somebody who adheres to presuppositionalist argumentation or presuppositional apologetics, reformed epistemology, maybe even. Those are the things that make up a presuppositionalist. Merely having presuppositions does not a presuppositionalist make. That's a good quote right there. You could take that. That's a good quote. What is your definition of evil? As I said, Roe's definition of evil for the evidential problem of evil was very specific. There exist instances of intense suffering which an omnipotent, omniscient being could have prevented without thereby losing some greater good or permitting some evil equally bad or worse. That's the definition defined prescriptively by Roe for the evidential problem of evil. There you go. So that's the definition of evil that's being used for that particular problem. So when you apply it to a natural evil, because again, there's natural and moral evils. The moral evil has to do with the free will and all that, but the natural evil, free will doesn't apply, right? Because there's no intentional states. This was what I was trying to explain to Jim Bob. The toothache and the hurricane don't have intentional states. So they're not a moral evil. There's no moral decision making to be had there. They're not agents of moral consideration or concern. And so the hurricane or the toothache, those are called natural evils. And he doesn't understand why they're called natural evils. He's like, well, what makes them evil? That's if you don't understand what makes them evil, then you don't understand the argument. They're literally defined as evil descriptively because God could have done something different. He didn't need to have hurricanes or toothaches or have them cause harm. That's the problem that he's running into. What do you think about Leibniz's best of all possible worlds? I can ask this because of a basis for discussion. Leibniz believed that this actualized world was the best of all possible worlds from a maximally great being. And if you look at the modal ontological argument, which is highly contingent upon the usage of the S5 modal axiom, that if God exists in one possible world, he must exist in all possible worlds, because this is something that flows out of the axioms in modal logic. That if you look at the reflexivity, the transitivity, the commutativity, all these different properties of all these different axioms, the K axiom, the T axiom, the M axiom, S4, S5 axioms, they all have to relate of how you can make a closure in modal logic and how you can relate all these possible worlds. So each axiom has its own specific mathematical, I guess, or logical property to it. And the S5 basically has all of them. It has all these different properties you can use to say that anything that is necessary in one possible world is necessary in all possible worlds. And so if God exists as a necessary being that is maximally great, that must exist in at least one possible world, even if he was contingent, because Swinburne defines God as narrowly logically contingent. If this maximally being does exist, he must exist in all possible worlds. And the modal ontological argument has been charged with defining God into existence, and that's not what it does. I've heard atheists argue that. Oh, Plantinga's modal ontological argument, you're just defining God into existence. That used to be big on the atheist experience, and that's not what it does. They were just wrong about that. I had great discussions with Ben Speed Watkins on that particular topic, who is a very, very interesting and highly educated philosophy person. But Leibniz would argue that this is the best of all possible worlds, meaning that God either had two problems. There's two problems. That one, God could not have made this world any different, because if this is the best of all possible worlds, what makes this possible world the best? What makes this actualized world the best? Could have God done something else? And if not, because this is the best possible worlds, what makes it that way? It's that saying that God literally could not have made some other possible world that's better, because there is no better world, which is coherent, right? It is coherent, because if this is the best possible world, then then God can only do things that are logically possible, then he couldn't have made something better. Now, there is some problems with that when you get into Cantor's arguments of infinities. And this is a problem with the term omnipotent, because God all-powerful, or this infinite being, Cantor recognized that there are different degrees of infinity, right? And so there's one infinity called alpha null, which is the cardinality of the reals. So in the real number system, alpha null would be the infinite number of reals out there, right? But there are alpha 1, alpha 2, which are greater infinities than all the reals. These are called transinfinities or transcardinalities. And so God being this infinite being, well, there's always a greater degree of infinity. There is no maximally great infinity because you can have different cardinalities. Just like I try to explain with the whole point on repeating, there's no number closest to 1 that isn't 1. There's no number that's the highest number to 1 that you cannot then finds a number closer. This is called a Cauchy sequence. For any number, any real number I pick, and any real number that I have a second number, I can always find a number between them. I can always get arbitrarily closer. X plus y divided by 2. So if you're looking at the number 1, I say, what's the highest number next to 1 that isn't 1? It doesn't exist. Why? Because I always get closer. But then you can say that the 1 is the limit. That's what they call it. The 1 is the limit. So is God the limit of the ultimate infinity? I don't know. But that's how I think that's what you're asking for Leibniz. And then Awesome Lawson says, yes, because if a maximally great being can possibly exist in some world, then it follows logically that he exists in all possible worlds by necessity, using the X5 axiom. But you don't have to take that axiom. And even then, it's a solid argument, but doesn't mean it have to be that way. That's the thing with mathematics. When you start using modal logic and you start using non-classical logic, it can make things that are mathematically true, but that doesn't have ontological presence. The Banach-Tarski paradox is a perfect example of that. If you decide in ZFC theory to take the axiom of choice, you can take a solid object, subdivide it down infinite amount of times, and then rebuild it, and you get 2 of those objects from the infinitesimal parts. The problem with that is in the reals, there's no such thing as an infinitesimal besides 0 because of the Archimedean property. And so the reals doesn't have these infinitesimals. But when you start using different types of non-traditional, non-classical mathematics, then you start having these weird things that have happened, these types of paradoxes. So when you start using modal logic, yes, the ontological argument is an interesting argument. It doesn't mean it has to be that way. You don't have to take that axiom, and even if you do, it doesn't mean that God has to exist. This is the difference also you got to remember between a local necessity or narrow necessity and a wide. I call them local and global. I've seen that out there, but somebody challenged me on there like, well, that's not really how they use it. I'm like, yeah, but I've seen it. But the way it's normally is the narrow versus broad. And so by saying something is locally necessary, that just means that the conclusion has to follow from the argument by a local necessity. But that doesn't mean it couldn't have been some other way. And so, I mean, an example of something along the lines of Steve has 3 animals. Steve has 2 dogs. Therefore, the third Steve only has 2 dogs. Therefore, the third animal is not a dog. Okay, that's logically, I just made this up, but it's just logically, valid, right? If I have 3 animals and I'm saying only two of them are dogs, that means the third animal can't be a dog. It has to be something else, right? It follows from the premises. But it is not a metaphysical necessity that I have to have 3 animals. It's not a metaphysical necessity that the third animal that I have doesn't have to be a dog. I could have no animals, metaphysically speaking. So local or narrow necessity is this runs into what's called the modal scope fallacy. People take the local necessity or the narrow necessity and they falsely attribute it to the broad. And I did this the other day. I really did. I made the modal scope lot. I even wrote an essay on my blog about the modal scope fallacy, and I made the same mistake. And I put it on my YouTube community tab, right? And some guy that knows logic was like, I think you have a modal scope fallacy. And at first I was like, I don't think I do, but walk me through it. Let me see what and he put something on logic, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I was like, yeah, you know what, dude? You are right. I have to take the hit on this. Why? Because logic is objective. Right? I mean, this is what I'm saying. If somebody can show me that I'm wrong using logic, reason, whatever, evidence, I will change my position. I've done it numerous times. I remember I had a 4-term fallacy once, and somebody pointed out, they said, hey, Steve, you have a 4-term fallacy. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, you're right. And I fixed it. But I went back and forth with this guy only a few times because I was like, maybe he's right. And sure enough, he was right. I had a modal scope fallacy. And so I want you guys to be able to understand the difference between the narrow necessity versus the broad necessity. Does that got you guys make sense? Everybody understand that now? That just because something is necessary by the conclusion must follow from the premises doesn't make it a broad metaphysical necessity that it has to be that way. So even though from the argument, within the scope of the argument, that Steve has 3 animals, Steve only has 2 dogs, therefore the third animal is not a dog, doesn't mean that it has to be that way, because I can have no dogs or no animals, right? All right. Of course, it's not 100%, but it's easily the best option of all options. Few options that there can be. I liken to the pink elephant in the room. Okay. Have you heard of Bill Craig give the red ball in the forest analogy? I have not. Would you like to come in and tell me about it? If you want to very badly believe in God, like every other person in my family, but I do not at all believe in God, does that mean I'm too evil or something because I'm a very good person? Well, it's funny. The Calvinist, yeah, you're evil, right? Well, that's because of hyperdestination anyways, right? God says who's the elect versus the reprobate. But to a Christian, if you don't believe in God, yeah, you're a heretic. You're evil. You're evil. To some Christians, I mean, again, not all of them. I don't want to paint Christianity with a broad brush, but they would say works are dead. Salvation's on grace alone. Works is dead. Blah blah blah. Doesn't matter how good a person you are. God doesn't care. All God cares about supposedly is your psychological state, whether you believe that He exists or not. Which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard for salvation. It doesn't make any sense to me that an all-powerful, rational God would say your entire future of existence for infinity is solely contingent upon a single psychological belief in your brain that you accept that He exists. Now, of course, Christians will come back, well, that's not really what it's saying. It's faith. It's faith and trust in. Well, if it's faith and trust in, then give me a little more to go with. If Jesus appeared and say, hey, look, I exist, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna trust you on this. You're powerful, powerful being here. I'm gonna trust you on it. I have faith in that. I have faith that you are a good being. Okay, I'm going to probably go with that. Now, some people would argue, well, even if God existed, the Old Testament God was malevolent, and why would you want to? Is He worthy of worship? And that's a good argument. That's a good argument. The New Testament God and the Old Testament God don't even seem like the same being to me. They're described completely different. But you could say, look, yeah, you're an all-powerful being, but Satan did that too. The 1/3 of the host of heaven supposedly did that too. If Satan, who had divine knowledge, said, hey, look, even with my knowledge, even as powerful as I am, I still reject you, God, what hope do we have? But at least he was informed. And so blind faith, even though God says, well, blind faith, blessed are thee who have believed without seeing, kind of stuff. But why? Why does it have to be that way? And even then, doubting Thomas still saw that supposedly it was the risen Christ, right? So that doesn't really make sense to me, that your entire salvation is based upon belief. And then you have Christians that mock that, saying, well, you're going to hell because you don't believe. Well, I have no control over what I believe because of doxastic involuntarism. I don't control my beliefs. And so that doesn't seem like a very fair way to see if you're going to have eternal life, so to speak. That to me doesn't resonate what a just God would be. Aren't you? You aren't evil, but you're a sinner like everybody else. Wouldn't they consider that to be evil, though? Because you're morally flawed, you're moral evil. Just we all sin, which means that you do something against the commandments of God in divine command theory. Divine command theory basically is ethical subjectivism, that doing the right action is doing what God commands. The actual act of doing it is what makes it moral, not that God commanded it. It's the actual act. It's act-based. And if you are a sinner and you do these moral evils, then anything that you do is something that is affront to God. But there's also, the Catholic Church has venial evils and mortal evils, right? And they're two different degrees. These venial evils are just, you did something bad. You can say a Hail Mary. You can, pray or whatever, and you'll be fine. You can pay the church money. We'll call what are they, plenary? What did the church call them? Indulgences, plenary indulgences, I think it was called back in the day, which was a total scheme, right? That a total scheme. Hey, look, you did these venial sins, and therefore you pay the church, and you're forgiven. Yeah, that's a racket. But there's also mortal sins, which are things that are just unforgivable. So even God differentiated between these minor sins compared to these major sins. Hank says, Jim Bob is right that your main criticism to his argument is an emotion-based rejection of God's system. No, it's not. It's not at all, Hank. And I see, this is what I don't get. This makes no sense. It's like you didn't even listen to my argument. Mine has nothing to do with emotivism at all. It has nothing to do with emotions. It has nothing to do with my likes or dislikes or anything like that. My objection was he wasn't attacking the argument as it was. My objection was that he was changing terminology. My objection was that he was conflating the logical problem evil with the evidential problem evil. You know, so I think you're just absolutely wrong on that. Have someone walk you through the Old Testament prophecies of Messiah. That's the best proof. That's not somebody else. The ones who do damage to you by others are evil. And I think people can be evil. I believe in evil. I'm an evil revivalist. I think there are certain things that people do morally to willfully hurt somebody that are evil. But there's also, different degrees of evil. The genocide, sexual assault, things of that nature. These are all things that are way more types of evils than just somebody doing something negatively to you on purpose to harm you. But I do think that people who willfully try to harm people are evil. I've always said there's two types of people. There's people that help and there's people that harm. I've always tried to be the person who helps. This is why I'm constantly attacked. I've never been that person who wants to harm somebody. I've never been that person who ever wants to cause harm to somebody else. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have some kind of a schadenfreude when I see people that are evil get their comeuppance, karma. I absolutely do. But I've never been the one to instigate any of that. That all comes around because of the fact that I do believe that evil exists in that capacity. I believe that karma exists, but not as a metaphysical being or anything like that. I just believe that karma is the term that we give for people that have repeated patterns that eventually, given enough time, it's almost inevitable it will catch up to them. I mean, look at Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump has done all kinds of horrific things. It's eventually starting to come up, catch up to him. He was just fined another $300-something million. He has like $440 million in fines. He was found liable for assault. He's been impeached twice. It's catching up to him. He has to stand trial for 90 counts of felonies. It's catching up to him because people like that, people that are narcissistic, people that think they're better than the average person that because they have money or something like that, it's going to catch up to them. It's just because it's almost like a law of nature. Chris, what's happening, man? Why don't you come on in? Get your happy butt in here, man. I need somebody with a brain. Seriously. And I love my audience. You guys are great out there. You guys are smart. But Chris, and I'm telling you, I was over in Jim Bomb's live chat, and it's like a different world. It really is. Because I talk to a lot of smart people. I talk to a lot of philosophy people. And then I go over there, and it's antithetical to philosophy. And they almost even say, well, we don't need to read the literature. It's so antithetical. Thank you. Yeah, awesome. I'd love to hear from you. It's sending on Facebook, right? I got kicked out of a Facebook group on radiometric dating because the admin was like, I've already proved that you're wrong. You're just, not willing to admit you're wrong. I'm like, you didn't prove that I was wrong. You haven't assailed radiometric dating. You haven't shown the earth is 7,000 years old. You live in a fantasy world. These are, I do believe, are reminiscent of delusions. If you think that you have demonstrated that the earth is 7,000 years old, I do consider that to be delusional. I don't think the belief alone that the earth is 7,000 years old or the belief in God is delusional. No, not at all. Not at all. But if you think that you're super, super, super smart, where you've shown that radiometric dating is wrong, and you haven't convinced the scientific world, then yeah, I'm going to probably chalk that up to delusion. But yeah, but it doesn't matter. I'm in so many different other groups with the same people, right? And I have my own Facebook group, the Great Debate Community. But it's just kind of funny because I'm like, dude, you have, and you know, they were also talking about Mary Schweitzer's soft tissue, Mark Armitage, you know, finding nerves in a triceratops horn, which was not, it was a bison horn. This horn was only 30,000 years old. It wasn't millions of years old. The guy's a fraud, a complete fraud. He didn't even publish in a reputable journal. He published in a non-peer review. I mean, it's reputable, but it's not peer review. He published in a journal about microscopes. He's a microscope tech, and he thinks he's, you know, blown the doors off evolution by finding nerves and soft tissue and other things. And that's not how any of this works. And carbon dating doesn't work that way. You can't carbon date things that are millions of years old. The half-life of carbon being 5,730 plus or minus, you know, 20 years, give or there. You know, some people use 5,720, some use 5,730, whatever. It's nominal, but it's still nowhere near the half-life of 4 billion years you get for like uranium, right, or thorium. And so, when you say, well, carbon dating of these dinosaurs show they're only 30,000 years old. Well, first of all, that's still greater than 7,000, right? So if you accept that the radiometric dating is correct, you've already disproved younger creationism. Well, no, we're just showing that it's inaccurate. Well, if it's inaccurate, maybe it's because you can't date things that are millions of years old with carbon dating. This is why we use isochronic dating. This is why we use lead dating, or argon potassium dating, or uranium thorium dating, or whatever, radion dating, whatever method you use for dating. Potassium argon 39, argon 40, whatever you use, those we know work. Why? Because those are not even based upon how much initial material you have. Those are based upon these chronogeological formulas using physics having to do with the daughter and parent ratios. Those work because of physics. They don't work because of carbon dating. Welcome, my friend.
Mate, what's going on?
Dude, I just need smart talk. And you're the best I got.
I'll leave then. I'll leave and come back another time then, I guess.
Well, you know, and to put it in perspective, let me frame it in a crisp way. Somebody who is a student of history that has read about history a little bit. When you go and talk to people,
just a little bit, yeah.
When people you talk to have no idea about the history and they've read 2 articles from The Guardian or something and think they understand these topics, don't you want to beat your head against the wall to the point where you start bleeding profusely? Because even myself, who's not formally educated in this particular field, I know enough to know that they're full of crap. And even I want to bang my head.
Let me tell you something. That one of the banes of my existence is Facebook and Twitter memes on history, you know, or especially the stupid atheist stuff you see getting out there, like the just all the meme lords, you know, especially around Christmas time. Anytime there's a holiday, they love to claim that, you know, the Christians stole this from the pagans, which they didn't. But it's pretty. It's just bad history everywhere. And the sad thing is, people just blindly follow it and believe it because it suits the narrative that's put out there. It's I know, like myself, Tim O'Neill is actually, he's really. I love Tim. He takes up the fight. He takes up the fight for
he's got that historians. He's got that corner.
Oh yeah, that's his wheelhouse, and I'm very glad he's there, and I'm happy for him to have it. I'll pipe in every now and then and just vent my frustration at the sheer idiocy. But I think it's pretty standard. I think people, but I mean, look, we're a tribal species, aren't we? You know, people want to follow their tribe, and their tribe is always right, and they're just going to find things that, you know, they agree with, and they're just going to nod along. You know, everyone wants to be in their bubble. Well, sorry, not everyone, but I think the majority of people are very, very happy in their bubble, and it's sad and pathetic.
Speaking of bubbles, I'm going to be hopefully having Brittany Simon on next week. She's a old friend of mine that I've known for years. Has been on the show many times. She has a whole thing that she deals with bubbles. That, pretty popular. She got like 80,000 subs or something like that. So yeah, so you might want to listen to that because she really gets into the details of what that even means by having bubbles, and I think she's doing a very good job. But you're absolutely right. Yeah. It's tribalism.
It's interesting. I think even though social media has been around for a few years, I think we're still trying to. I think we're still trying to come to terms with how we all interact with it. It used to be a case of there would be people who had the same thoughts as you in your community, but it wasn't out there in a loud way, or if you had, I guess, very niche thoughts, you didn't really know other people with those niche thoughts. But with social media now, you can find, if you are of the Purple Elephant Society, you will find other people of the Purple Elephant Society.
Yeah. It's weird how it even happens. There's certain groups of niche groups and niche fetishes. I don't even know how these people find each other, right? I mean, it's just like it's so weird that you have like for example, when you find a couple where they both are sociopaths and they both have do horrific things to a child. It's bad enough, right, that one person can do something harmful, but they find a mate, they find somebody they marry who also has that proclivity. How does that happen? Except for social media.
Steve, I don't know if you can hear me, mate. I've just
I can hear
a sound issue. So if you just want to carry on for a minute without me, I'm going to sort out my tech issues and I will be back. I can't actually hear anything at the moment, so give me a minute.
Okay. Yeah, you can't hear that anyways, but okay. This is just fine. But yeah, I think he's absolutely right. It's tribalism, and when you have this stuff come around every Christmas with the whole Christianity came from paganism, Jesus came from Horus and all that, that's absolutely wrong. It's been well established. It's absolutely wrong. It comes from the Zeitgeist movie. There is no academic foundation for any of that. There's no historical accuracy for any of that. And Tim O'Neill every year points that out. But you still have these atheist memers out there, which is the bottom of the barrel, right? Every group has their fruit on the ground. Every group. There's creationists out there that have their people out there that have the expertise, and there's people out there that are fruit on the ground creationists. But theists, you have your well-educated Christians who know the topics extremely well, and then you have your bottom of the barrel fundies. Same thing for atheists. You have bottom of the barrel atheists that just point out memes, and they don't care about the verticality or the veracity of.
If you can hear me again, I came in at the right time because I heard bottom of the barrel atheist. So I assume you're speaking about myself.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Gotcha, mate. Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that these meme people that we see on Facebook and Twitter, they're not interested in the dialogues. They're not. It's just the same thing.
No, they're not. And look, you don't expect everyone who's going to be interested in having, high level or intense dialogues. But I don't think it's too much to ask for people to have honest dialogues. If you're going to share information and then argue that it must be true, or, say, ha, Christians are so stupid, look at this, then, there's two things you've got to be prepared to do. The first is, if you're shown to be wrong, go, hey, I was wrong. I'll cop to that. I was wrong. And the second thing is you've got to be prepared to actually do a little bit of research and to actually, not just talk out of your ass, because way too many people do that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this though. Like, there's a couple of people who are charging me of being like intellectually dishonest and all that. And once I hear that, I'm not dealing with somebody that I want to deal with any longer. I'm not putting up with it. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I don't deal with it any longer. I've made a reputation to have a fair and balanced panels. I bring in all sides. I objectively look at all the information. And for somebody who says I'm dishonest and I'm just being sophistic and like that, you're wasting my freaking time.
The people that usually say that to you, they're idiots. They're essentially they're usually people who are, admins on the Facebook group, so that's their little fiefdom. That's their power. Mm-hmm. There's 1,000 people in that group and they control it with an iron fist. It's
I told you
the kind of people you would never want to get actual power.
Yeah, I told you. When you have admin abilities and you kick people out that don't agree with you, and they say, "Oh, I've already shown you wrong." No, you haven't. I already said that I'm willing to change my position.
They always say that, and they always say, they always go, oh, debate me, bro, and then they never show up. It's funny. Look, just like I'm happy that Tim O'Neill deals with the bad historians, or actually, sorry, I won't call them bad historians, the people who spread bad history memes. I'm so glad that we have you to deal with the bad atheists and bad Christians. Actually, you kind of go, you're diverse. You go across the.
I'm an agnostic. That's why I'm equal opportunity. I mean, Tim O'Neill's niche is that whole zeitgeist of the Christ being this retelling of certain mythos. Now, I will agree. I will say this. I think there's multiple versions of the Christ mythos. I think there are multiple iterations and things that it's predicated upon, but it's not Horus. It's not,
Oh no, it's not that.
Pagan stuff.
Look, I think it's really interesting when you have a look at the mythicist arguments. I think there's something that both sides miss on, and that's that. All right, well, before we actually start debating whether Jesus existed or didn't exist, we need to define who we're talking about. Because if we're talking about Son of God who walked on water and did all this magical stuff, then no, certainly rose from the dead. No, certainly there is no historical evidence for that. If we're going to go down that path, but if we're talking about an itinerant preacher, in ancient Judea who sort of wandered around and became of note, well, the evidence is there for that. There's no question. But it all comes down to how are we going to define it? And the thing is, neither side seems to want to give any ground on that. The anti-mythicist crowd tends to be very, well, I mean, this is all just fairy tales, and look how ridiculous it is. It's, there's no evidence, and look, it's the first three books of the Bible or the Gospels, they're all pretty much the same, so therefore it's proof that it's not, which is actually really bad historical reasoning. Incidentally, it's bad methodology. But then you'll get the other side that will say, well, no, absolutely, he did exist because he was just a person. What's so crazy about a person existing? And the thing is, it's almost like you've got two sides shouting in the wind, not able to hear the other, and arguing about a different thing. There's a lot of grey in the mythicist argument, and the reality is, it's
I think it's by design. I think it's by design.
Yeah, I think both sides use pretty poor arguments. Like the one that gets me is the whole, the first three, like Matthew, Mark, and Luke are all pretty much the same. They're saying that's evidence that it was, it was copied, or it was this, or it was that. But then what you've got to remember is, in that period of time, most people were illiterate. So guess what? The stories were actually shared verbally. It was an oral tradition. So there, and anyone who's played Chinese Whispers knows that. When a story is told a lot of times, small things will change, but essentially you get the same story, especially when you've got cultures that rely on an oral tradition. And it's actually evidence that there was an oral tradition, because you've got these three Gospels that are so similar, but have basically been written for different audiences. And if you look at why there is those three Gospels in there, it's because no one could agree which one to put in. And there was fights over which one was going to go in. So, but it's interesting, but that's a main mythicist argument. And it's, when you actually look at historical methodology, well, it's not that great an argument.
No, I think you're 100% correct. And I think that the problem in the mythicist and the historicist discussions is that they're talking about vastly different things, and it's not well set out at the beginning. I believe there was a rabbi. I believe there was a Jewish man who was well known in the region, named Jesus. I believe that man existed, and that the stories came from that particular individual. I believe that, and that's what I would say would be a historicist view. The mythicist that I've seen, the way when I listen to like Carrier, which I hate doing anymore, but whatever. He turned on me hard. I don't even know why. I never did anything against the guy. I was even taken out to dinner one time, and he started associating with your favorite. I read two Guardian story guy.
Snow. The greatest atheist ever to live, who knows everything.
Yeah, and Godless Engineer, and he hangs out with all them now. But because they love his mythicism stuff, even though that most scholars don't take Carey seriously on that. But he just
no scholars, no mainstream scholars do.
Yeah. Well,
and look, that's not because there isn't an argument and there isn't merit in what Carrier writes, but I mean,
right. No, I agree with that. Yeah, that's
the problem Carrier's got is he's hedged his entire career on this one thing that is his niche. He speaks about I think I'm pretty sure it's I'm pretty sure I can't remember which book or where it was, but I remember him speaking about the reason that a lot of these Christian or theologians or Christian historians don't put this evidence out there is because that's their entire industry. It would go up in flames. That would be the end of it. Actually, it might have been David Fitzgerald who said that. Sorry, but the thing is, Carrier's hedged his entire career on it, and I think there's some good arguments, and I think there's some good things that he points out, and I think that there's certainly things he points out that we can show. Okay, well, there's aspects of this that undoubtedly were added after, or there's certainly like the Josephus stuff. That's legitimate. That's
Josephus and Tacitus. I never want to hear them ever again.
But the thing is, his problem is I don't know what he would do. I think the only option for him from an academic point of view would be to completely go the other way and convert to Christianity, which I don't think he's going to do.
No. Well, I mean, what's her name, dude? The Fifth Horseman. Ion.
Well, no, she didn't really convert.
I know she didn't. I don't think she converted at all.
I understand exactly where she's coming from.
I understand her reasoning, but that's not Christianity. She's taking the cultural aspect.
Yeah, and I can understand that because I've had conversations with many people where I said, I miss the old days of going to church and nice music and the nice messages that you used to get. I said, wouldn't it be great if we had, atheist Christian,
I totally get that.
Christian atheists or something like that.
Yeah, look, I have nothing against cultural Judaism, for example. I love my heritage. Sabbat, all that. The food, the traditions. I think it's amazing, and I think that if people want to go to church for social functions and things of that nature, fine. I have an atheist church for Pete's sake. I don't even get why not. I get that, and so, but I understand why she's converting, but she's not. I don't think she accepts the resurrection of Christ.
Oh no, definitely. Right. I'd say definitely not. But I know plenty of people who are, in inverted commas, Christians who are as atheist as I am. It's just that they feel from a cultural perspective. It's
I don't have a problem with that. I don't think
there's a cultural perspective there. There's certainly this heritage, but also that with a lot of what's going on in the world, that it's almost like, well, it's better the devil you know.
Yeah. No, I agree with it. But going back to Carrie real quick, Carrie on his Facebook page accused me of lying on something. I'm like,
I remember that. I was in that conversation.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? I was like, give me an example. And he's like, well, don't do it again. I'll block you. I'm like, up your ass, man. I was like, screw you. I was like, I don't know what the hell happened to you, dude. But to accuse me of lying on your page, you can piss right off. I was like, nope, done.
Well, what happened is all the McCrazies were blowing smoke up his backside and getting airtime.
Right, exactly. So, yep. 100%. 100% what happened.
I don't dislike him, but
I have nothing yet. Yeah, I don't dislike him, but I'm just saying that he believed BS when I treated that man very respectfully, and and he wasn't the only person that had done that to me. But on a Facebook page, to say that I was lying, and then when I asked him for an example, he wouldn't give it to me and threatened to block me. Now that is being dishonest. Because give me an example.
How often do you see that where someone will say, "Oh, you do this all the time"? Okay, well, give me an example. When have I done this? Oh, well, you do it all the time. Okay, well, it should be easy to find that one small example.
Right? Exactly. Call me out. I'm giving the opportunity right here. On his page. Show me what I write about.
I mean, hey, I'm the first one to say if I get something wrong, I want to be corrected. And I mean, I used to buy into the mythicist arguments. I used to buy into it before I guess I really got in and studied history and historical method properly. I bought into the mythicist arguments.
But getting something wrong is not lying,
I was wrong,
Chris.
I was wrong.
That's how these people operate in their lands of dishonesty. When somebody makes an honest mistake, that's not lying. or if they misremember something, or they confabulate something, or they have a misremembrance, or whatever. These are not examples of lying.
No.
And they don't seem to understand that. It's a very dishonest approach. But he couldn't even give me an example of anything, nothing. But real quick on his mysticist stuff, he's actually arguing that there was no being, there was no Jesus even that existed. From my understanding, his mysticism, there was no actual being at all. It's all just some type of rank rock, whatever.
That's the crux of his argument. He's taken an extreme position on it.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the conditions for those types of mythos, I don't think Christianity even falls into a lot of them. But again, I think that the general consensus, I think almost ubiquitously, people in both theist and atheist that are academics accept that there was a man named Jesus. Therefore, mythicism, I think, is false. And I think that having these bizarre approaches to try to undermine Christianity.
Well, once again, it depends how do you define mythicism and how you define.
I think he defines it as there was no actual even core.
Oh no, I know he does, but I guess if you were to have a conversation with someone and take a position, am I a mythicist or am I not a mythicist? I mean,
right.
But I can say I sit in the grey because I believe the human individual existed.
Right.
I don't believe the magical man who walked on water existed.
But isn't that a limitation of linguistics in our language? When I say, "Hey, do you believe Jesus existed?" We have a connotation there, right? We're asking the person, generally speaking, when you say, "Do you believe Jesus existed?" Do you believe that he was divine? It has been so well established that the man existed that it's never been a question of, do you believe there was a man named Jesus? That was never. You don't find that in history, do you? That's just foundational. The question when they say, "Do you believe in Jesus?" was the divine aspect of Christ.
There was a little bit in the late 19th century where it became semi-popular in historical academia for a very brief period, but a lot of the arguments kind of quickly got thrown out when new information was found, or when the historical methodology was sort of looked at. That was more just a Victorian rage against the machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. Kifty says, if you want to grasp the problem of evil argument, then you have to really grasp what mysticism involves. Okay, sure. I mean, I'm not into mythicism. I read the Tower of Physics. Does that count? Years ago. And the Dancing Woolly Masters. Do you remember those two books?
No.
Really?
I was going to say, I don't really think that mythicism in any way, shape, or form deals with the problem of evil.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt. I'm trying to wrap my head around maybe how it could. I mean,
maybe if you approach it from a Christian perspective.
Well, Christian mythicism. Yeah, I'm thinking.
Well, no, if you approach it from a Christian worldview, then yeah, okay, mythicism is probably going to seem pretty evil.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you involve mythicism to quiet contemplation, interflection, introspection, trying to become one with the divine in that aspect, I don't know how that necessarily absolves the argument that there is gratuitous evil out there. And that's another thing Jim Bob was trying to. I swear to God, I have to go back and listen to it, but I'm almost positive he said you made up that term. Gratuitous. I'm like, I didn't make it up. That term is in the literature. That literally is the evidential problem of evil in the peer review papers. Gratuitous evil exists. That's the argument. If gratuitous evils exist, then God wouldn't allow gratuitous evil. Therefore, gratuitous evil exists. Therefore, there is no God. I mean, that's the simple rendition of the evidential problem of evil using gratuitous evil. But he was like, you just made that term up kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, I didn't. So what are you talking about?
Yeah. See, I think this whole, what is evil, what isn't evil? I mean, that's really subjective, sadly.
I think it's no. See, I don't think it is. I think it's objective only because these terms are prescribed. You know me, I'm not a prescriptivist. I'm a descriptivist, as you know. But when you're using evil in the term the evidential problem of evil, it is the defined term. You actually even see it defined with the DEF equal, which means that it's defined that way in the literature. When you ever see an equal sign with the three letters DEF or you see a semicolon or semicolon with an equal sign, that means it's prescriptively being defined that way. And so the evil in the evidential problem evil is a very descriptive very prescriptive usage.
Well, I think once again it probably comes down to definitions.
It does. Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm just talking about evil in the most simplistic terms. There's things that I would consider evil. There's things that you would consider evil. Probably most things we would agree on. But then, you can get someone turn around and say Donald Trump's evil. Some people say Donald Trump's not evil, and obviously there's subjective opinions.
But this is why it's objective in this particular case, because this is how evil is defined in the evidential problem evil. Ready? This is Rowe's definition, and it's not just describing evil; it is telling you what he means by evil in this argument. And there's a distinction to be made there. So Rowe argues that in the problem evil, there exist instances of intense suffering which an omnipotent, omniscient being could have prevented without thereby losing some greater good or permitting some evil equally bad or some evil equally bad or worse. So what he's saying is that evil is, in this particular argument, that God could have made things different, but he chose not to. So if there's an instance of intense suffering, that's evil because God could have made that suffering alleviated. That's what the word evil means in those arguments.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and
I'm not a philosopher, even though technically I'm doing a doctorate of philosophy.
Right. Well, every PhD is a doctor of philosophy.
Yeah, I did chuckle at that. I thought, God, I know nothing about philosophy.
But do you agree though the way I'm explaining it is very simplistic, that this is an objective thing for the definition because he's literally defining it to prescriptive.
Oh, look, I understand what you're saying, but I'm the first to admit this is absolutely not my wheelhouse. I
just want to make sure that makes sense because they're all over there saying you're dishonest, you're not making sense yet. I talked to my
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, and I guess approaching it from an academic perspective, what you've got to remember is most people wouldn't be approaching it particularly.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. But this is why it's nuanced.
Facebook atheism, in particular, is I'd probably call it the crux of stupidity. And I think they did they actually found out that 80% of the Christian groups and pages on Facebook are actually run by Russian bot farms.
I don't doubt that. I think there's so much difference.
Incidentally, what Cafe, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, is writing. I think we might be talking about different mythicisms. I think there's mythicism from a philosophical point of view. I'm talking about the historical mythicism as it relates to the existence of Jesus.
Oh yeah, and he's talking.
I was trying to work out. Hang on, how does? Okay, it's obviously a terminology forms in another discipline as well.
Yeah, he's talking about Platonic forms. Yeah, and so that would be like mathematical Platonism would be a Platonic form. But this guy asks, are hurricanes inherently evil or only when they cause undesirable conditions for humanity? Well, going back to Rowe's definition, hurricanes are evil if it causes suffering that God could have prevented.
What if a hurricane hit Berlin in 1939 and wiped out the Nazi leadership?
It's still suffering.
That would be a hurricane.
Well, no, because again, this is where it goes into the normative ethics, okay? Of what it means to do it to a moral act is either right or wrong, right? So there's something called value pluralism, which would mean that there are maybe two actions out there, both of them evil or both of them morally impermissible, but you have to choose one of them. It's the lesser of the two. And so the value pluralist would say, look, these are both bad things, but I have to choose one. The greater good is choosing the one of the lesser evil. So even though it would be an evil in that aspect of the harm it's causing, there's a greater good that comes from it. But you can still say it's evil. Does that make sense? But that's just one way of looking at that.
I guess it makes sense, but there's probably not a lot I can add to the conversation because it's when I say it's not my wheelhouse, it's really, I mean, I've got probably very basic generalized opinions.
I just want to make sure that makes sense. I don't make sense to them apparently, Chris. According to his audience, I don't make a lot of sense. But
when you're dealing with idiots, who have already made their mind up, you're dealing with idiots who've already made their mind up. I mean, I used to when we used to do six pack all the time. and anyone would bring up philosophy, I used to joke, no, that's not for me. I'll send you to Steve because you're my go-to for that. You want philosophy? Meet Steve McRae. He'll sort you out.
I think my niche is still, I mean, everybody's known for like one thing. If you make a name for yourself on the internet, everybody's kind of known for like one thing. Clearly the one thing that I'm known for is the whole lack theism thing, right? The whole lack of belief atheism is crap. I'm well known for this, right? I don't know anybody that even talks about it as much as I have that have written about it.
You are the man.
Go-to guy on that. And that's fine.
And you know what? It's funnily enough, you changed my thoughts on when I initially came into atheism. I was very much on it's just a position of lack of belief. And we had a conversation about it, and I thought, no, you know what? Maybe my position isn't correct. I looked into it, and lo and behold, my position changed on it.
Same with Rationality Rules. Same with Alex O'Connor's Cosmic Skeptic. They changed their position too.
That being said, I mean,
I've actually influenced people. I've actually made a difference.
People can define themselves as whatever they want. I mean, if someone says, "Oh, look, I lack belief in God, so I'm going to call myself an atheist," that's cool. But people can call themselves whatever they want.
Right.
I don't have to accept that person. That doesn't mean I have to accept it. I'm happy to welcome someone into the atheist community and say, yeah, cool. You want to be an atheist? Good. That's great. But do I, from my perspective, would I consider them an atheist? No. But that's okay.
Fine. Agree.
It's perfectly fine. They can call themselves whatever they want.
Yep. This is why I hate when people strawman me. It's like, oh, Steve says you can't call yourself. I've never argued anything of the sort. Call yourself a
I've never heard you argue that.
Never.
In fact, we've had this conversation, more than once, and even back when I was very much on the lack theist perspective, and at no time did you ever go down that path. All that happened was over time, and see, this is the thing. I mean, I don't think enough people actually look into things. I think people will take a position and then go, that is my position and it shall never be changed. It's a very religious way of looking at things. I actually pride myself on, and this isn't to pat myself on the back or anything, but I pride myself on having my mind change where I'm wrong. I like, because that means I've learned something. Yeah. That means I've expanded my thinking. I've come into a new perspective. I mean, I used to believe Christianity 100%.
Exactly. You can't change your mind. You want to still be a Christian, right?
Yeah. But the problem is, and maybe this is where my wheelhouse is. What my biggest gripe is, people get out of religion and they come into what we call non-religion, and essentially what they do is they replace their pastor with atheist leader.
Yep. 100%.
And that's why it's been one of my biggest criticisms of like the Matt Dillahunty.
Matt Dillahunty, exactly.
Yeah, it's who I think initially when he first started out, I think where he was and where he is now is two very different things.
I don't like where he's at now. I think he lost it. I think he was way better over a decade ago.
He used to be fantastic.
I like the early episodes of the Atheist Experience.
Even he used to have conversations and listen. Yeah, sure. I mean, he'd do the yelly hang up thing. That kind of became his gimmick. But but he would listen. He would argue.
And he would also say, "There's no God." He would actually take the strong, what they would call.
Whereas now, if anyone were to dare disagree with him and his worldview and perspective on things, well, you are shut out and you are cancelled. He's basically become what he hated. 100%. He has become a religious leader in atheism, and I think it's actually really sad. It's because I used to have a lot of respect for the guy, not so much anymore. And I guess the same argument could be made about a lot of people. I mean, I think Aaron Ra sort of has the same thing going on, but I don't. He hasn't. I don't think he doesn't embrace it. I think there's a lot of people who will follow Aaron blindly, and if Aaron says something, well, that's it. It is gospel. As far as they're concerned. I don't think he really embraces that. I don't even really know if he notices it.
I agree.
I certainly don't. I don't get the impression that it's something that he either notices or is bothered by. I think he just does his thing. I mean, I've got a few thoughts on Aaron and the way he acts, but I mean, at the end of the day, he is who he is. And I think he's a net positive within atheism. But
the Russian translation, by the way, is "There is no hope for the godless." I translated it.
Yet.
The funny thing before we get to Kefi in here, the thing with Matt Dillahunty is that I'm going to take credit for this, Chris. I'm going to do it. I don't care. I believe that was my arguments that changed Matt Dillahunty's mind on him calling himself an agnostic atheist, because every time he argues now that agnostic atheism is nonsensical, he uses my arguments, and everybody that I know
he would never admit to it.
But he tacitly does. You know why? Because every time that conversation come up, he attaches it to my name. Every single time.
But every time your name comes up, he throws a tantrum.
Oh, every single time. And he'll say, he said, well, he said this, I swear to God, on Twitch. He said, well, one thing the agnostics do get right, and he starts talking about agnostic atheism. He's not talking about the agnostics. He's talking about me. He's talking about me.
Come on, you are the agnostics.
That's the other niche I have. Name one other person on social media that has ever done the amount of writings I've done to show the problems of agnostic atheism. Name one. And then the ones that have always came after my work. I mean, Answers and Reason, great guys. Joe over there and Dave, love those guys. But everything they've written on these topics came after they wrote the McRae virus essay on me, where because I changed Joe's mind too. He was a lactheist. So they've taken my work and ran it, which is perfect. I love that. But who talks about it? Who's really shown logically these things? I mean,
I'll admit there is a lack of research into others who have written on it from my part, but you certainly are. I'd say, from my perspective, you're the authority on the issue.
Oh, you're sweet. I sent my paper to Malpass today. I don't know why. I just never saw. I haven't talked to Malpass in a very long time, and I don't know if he went the way of carrier with me or not. I doubt it, because he's a very down to earth guy, and I used to talk to him all the time. When he was hanging out at a pub, he would just call me and chat when he's drunk.
Everyone goes crazy at least once.
Yeah, and so I don't know if he did or
not. I haven't gone crazy yet. They've tried to recruit me, but I've never gone.
You can't now. You're fucked. You can if you did.
I think I'm too far in.
You're deep. You're deep into it, man. You're deep. Cafe.
Pretty good, man. I was wondering if you still have that clip where Matt Dillahunty's reading some of your stuff, and he's like, "Steve's just wrong. Words are a bitch."
I remember when he said that. He's like, words are a bitch, and so is Steve, right?
Yeah, some stuff. I mean, completely denying the logic behind everything that you.
He knows my logic is right, though. That's the funniest thing. He understands the difference of these topics. He just plays stupid. He knows.
No, I agree with you, man. And yeah, he's always, I think he's still confused on what the hell he even represents in himself, because he always says, I think lately he's been calling himself a hard atheist, but he still says, I don't know whether God exists or not.
I see him. He vacillates a lot, because again, I think Chris really got to the crux of the nature of Matt Dillahunty. He came from a very religious background. He was studying to be a pastor, preacher, whatever. And when he left that, he took that same mindset with him. He didn't apply the same critical thinking that a lot of people do that come to atheism for different reasons. And so he just substituted one religion for another. Now, atheism is not a religion, but his view of it has high degree of religiosity. And he cannot be wrong because of his ego. He cannot be wrong because of his image. He'll never say that, hey, look, everything Steve has said about these topics on atheism is what the academic literature says. I disagree with it. Let me show you why. That's different. But he has outright said that I was wrong, and he is incorrect on that. And experts,
I believe that they did make an argument once as to why you were wrong. I believe it was Stevie's wrong because he's a meanie poo-poo.
I'm a poopy head. The poopy head argument.
And because because Kyle was right or something.
Yeah.
Until he wasn't, and then they just didn't speak about it again.
I suck.
Yeah, you're just a meanie poo-poo, so you are never right.
I miss our topics. We got to stream more, Chris. We got to do more stuff together. You're like, seriously, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but you literally are one of my favorite people to have conversations with.
Oh, I love streaming with you. It's if we can make the times right.
We got to figure it out, man. We just
do it,
stream
because I mean, what time is it there for you right now?
You're almost like my new Kyle in that way.
Does that mean I get to steal the channel from you?
Let me put it in perspective. Look, all things considered, Kyle and I worked well together. Kyle and I had good rapport on screen.
It was great when you guys did the show. It was great. I mean, that was one of the first things that I listened to was the Non Sequitur show when I got out of religion. It was fantastic. So I think Kyle's charismatic. And look, when he's not trying to steal channels from and beating up his boyfriend, he's probably a great guy.
Sure, totally. But that's what I need. These topics are very difficult to discuss sometimes, and it's easier when you have people that can carry along the conversation. People that do podcasts solo. I think it's much more difficult than having a two-person part.
I've done a few solo ones, and half the time I'm just like, I'm speaking, and is anyone listening? And it's sort of, you don't know where you've made errors. Even like you can say something without realizing it, and not sort of get picked up. But mate, look, if we can make times work, because I mean, I guess the time zone's always been the challenge for us. I
know my nights are the best though. Like after 10:30, I can do whatever the hell I want.
Okay, but I mean, what time is it there for you? It's got to be during the day for you, I'm guessing.
No, it's 12:30 a.m.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, it's
and my roommate
7:30 p.m. here. So
my roommate goes to work 4 days out of the week, and so I have the place to myself. It's quiet, and so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, anytime after like 10 something, I'm usually home. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You got to get permission every now and then. Well, I mean, we can chat off air about that. We can definitely.
Yeah, Kathy, what else do you want to talk about? I'm just like, we're just chilling and hanging out. I'm surprised. You know what sucks though, Chris? This video hangout tonight, absolutely fantastic. I enjoy it, and there's probably something that people could have learned from this. Yet they're the least watched because of the time.
Yeah, that was always my challenge with Six Pack. I'd be doing it at like 5 a.m. for the US. Great time for me, but 5 a.m. for the US. So people would start coming on and start watching, just as we were finishing.
Yep, people watch us after the fact, but it's still I like the real time, feedback and the real time discussions, and so there could have been more people involved. But Kathy, what else do you want to talk about? We need some more people in here.
I was wondering who made that meme where you're looking at the one where you're looking at the Earth and you're like, wait a minute, it's all political sophistry, and then yeah, always has been. Matt's behind you with the gun, and
I made that meme.
Oh, cool, man! That was awesome.
Yeah. Surprised you remember that. Yeah, no, I said it's all philosophy. Yeah.
I've always wanted to talk to you. Maybe if not on your channel, I would love to come on mine about mysticism, because it deals with, this is another topic that comes up real often with Matt's show is, mystical experience. And
you've called him before. You've talked to him on this, haven't you?
Yeah. And whenever he brings that up, and especially if it involves psychedelics, he always jumps to what he calls super strawberry. And, I'm pretty sure you've heard him say this, where he's like sitting somewhere, I don't know if on a toilet or wherever the hell he's sitting, and he sees the wood grain in the door, and it pops out in the form of a strawberry with a cape on with the S or whatever, and it does a lap around his head, and then it goes back into the wood grain. And I've heard him say similar stuff like that. Like I heard him say MCS for lizard came out of the drawing and it went back into the drawing. But this completely misses the point about what involves, what professionals at Johns Hopkins call a mystical experience. And they usually talk about non-duality unity, where there's the subject-object duality that we experience in our everyday waking consciousness. There's a complete dissolution in that, where people can no longer identify themselves with the rest of reality. It's also called ego death in psychology, where there is no perceived ego inside that
I
phenomenon.
remember ego death. Wasn't that Freudian? And I fixed my. I mean, I've been trying to adjust my mic. I turned my gain up higher, and I think that's probably why it sounds funny. I'm turning it.
You're coming out fine, man.
Well, yeah, but the outside. So I lowered my gain speed. So let me know if I'm not peaking as much. It should sound a little bit clearer. I only changed it because Brandon was in here and his mic is always weird. But let me know if my mic sounds better now. But yeah, so these mystical experiences. I do believe that people have mystical experiences. I do believe in spirituality, but I don't mean that as in a supernatural aspect. But I just believe that people have had things like experiences of oneness with the universe, looking at a sunset and listening to music, having trances, having out of body experiences, which are not out of body experiences. They're internalized. They're sleep paralysis, but they sure feel like something beyond the normal, right? And so,
even in the neuroscientific studies, they do emphasize that there are it's a biologically normal phenomenon. They're not talking about something that defies the laws of physics.
Right. Oh, I get sleep paralysis all the time. I've had many lucid dreams, many lucid dreams, more than I can even remember.
So I'll throw something in here really quickly because this is completely not my wheelhouse, but I'm actually liking the point that's getting brought up here, and I do need to go in a minute. But deja vu has always presented an issue for me because I think we've all experienced it. I certainly have experienced it. And I've experienced it to the point where something's happened and I've gone, hang on, I've dreamt this before. It's just so familiar, and I still haven't wrapped my head around the explanation for that.
I've heard a couple of different things.
Probably the one thing.
I've heard a couple of different things. By the way, deja vu, are you the man that I once knew? There's a couple things. One, I've heard that deja vu is basically a time delay between your optic nerve processing and the brain processing. And there's another one that is a form of what's called temporal lobe epilepsy. So you have this minor, in your head, it's this minor epileptic seizure or something that makes it appear that you've experienced something before, but is a misremembrance. Because most of us have had deja vu, and it's really weird, right? Because you're like, didn't I just have that? Didn't I feel like I've experienced this before? And also, I think, and I've also read that we all have a lot of dreams, and we all don't remember all of our dreams, right? Because most dreams we just don't remember. But when you have something that you experience that's really like a dream that you might have had, then there's that cognition there that, oh wait, have I experienced this before? Because I can tell you, from experience. It's odd. Well, hang on, have you ever had something where you couldn't remember that it was a real life experience or a dream or not? Because that's the weirdest. That sucks.
Yeah, I have, and that's that sort of. There was a few
it's disconcerting
times I had that experience, and there might have been maybe some chemical assistance involved a long time ago. But
yes,
mate, I am going to have to run.
Mine wasn't, but mine was a chemically induced, but I can get that. But yeah, all right.
So look, really good. Cafe, sorry I didn't get to chat to you more. I'm actually really interested in what you're saying, and hopefully you and Steve continue to have the conversation. I'm going to come back and listen to it later. But Steve, as always, mate, is an absolute pleasure.
You're one of the best, man.
Do this more often.
I don't know how your channel hasn't, just you are.
The reason my channel hasn't grown is because I've streamed about 3 times in the last 12 months. That's why you don't tend to grow.
But you are well respected in your own little bubble. So,
in my bubble, I rule, don't I? We all rule in our own bubble. But mate, have fun,
bye, buddy. Yep.
Be good. Everyone out there, whether you're listening now or later, be kind to each other.
Good advice. All right.
I wanted to add something to that, Steve, if you don't mind.
Go for
it. Because of course, the rationalist, materialist type will account deja vu to some kind of, psychological explanation. And if you listen to guru type or spiritualists, they might say that the reason we've experienced deja vu is because this moment is an echo in the cycle of eternity.
Yeah, I mean, but those are to me all ad hoc explanations, right? They're just bare possibilities. They're not grounded in any kind of scientific reasoning. And so when we look at science from a methodological point of view, we want to find naturalistic explanations, and positing something like that, I think, takes it out of that category. It's just
no, sure, I agree, but I don't know how to what degree we can dismiss that it may be the case that for instance, I think someone came up to the Dalai Lama and said, the physicist mentioned the Big Bang, and the Dalai Lama said bang bang bang. I guess the implication is that there hasn't been just one Big Bang. The universe has been kind of like this big bounce model of like it's been going on forever. It's been repeating itself.
Right, but that's scientific, right? The big bounce in the cyclic universe.
Yes, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't want to risk boring you here, man, but I do. If you ever have the opportunity one day, I would love to invite you, at least on my channel, if not have an opportunity on yours to discuss these topics, man. I've always liked talking to you about philosophy and all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I would. I mean, I have kind of been avoiding panels lately, but I'm starting to get back into it. I've started streaming more. I went through like 8 months of hell, and I mean, I'm still not fully recovered, and I got a lot of stuff going on, but I'm trying, and I put out these things because I want to connect to my audience, and I want to still talk about these topics because it keeps me sane. I don't like having diminished cognitive abilities. I don't like having diminished physical abilities. And so if I don't talk about these topics, I feel like I'm going to forget all this stuff because I already have relapses of memory. I couldn't even remember my own social security number the other day. That's how bad it's gotten. And I don't like that. I don't like that.
There was this one guy you invited on to the non sequitur. It was you, Kyle, Shannon, and it was a guy that you invited on to talk about DMT. And I can't recall his name. I don't know if you can.
I don't, but I remember the episode.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I found that really interesting, and he ended up inviting me onto his podcast. I really, I'm glad you had him on, but man, I would have loved for you to invite me that day.
It was we talked about stone depth, the stoned ape theory too.
Yeah, the stoned ape theory. Yeah.
Yeah. His name was Isaac Lindenberg.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did it just ring a bell? I mean, you remembered it better than your social security number.
Well, no, I just looked it up.
Okay.
His name.
Yeah.
I cheated. I totally Googled that.
No, yeah, it was Isaac. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But I do remember the episode. I don't remember the details of it. That was 4 years ago. But I do think that that this nature of cyclic nature resonates through a lot of Eastern Orthodox and Asian type mythos, right?
Both Western and Eastern religions. Yeah.
What's it called? And I haven't ecoprosis. Is that what it's called?
I haven't heard that term.
Ecroptic. Yeah.
Okay.
The Stoics had this model of cosmology that the universe was basically born and then died, born and died, right? So it was a fiery birth like the phoenix, and then it would cool off, and then it would just keep rebirthing itself. Called the ecroptic universe was part of that. Yeah.
And well, I'm sure, I don't know how deeply you've looked into like Eastern philosophy, like Hinduism, or
not at all. Like literally, I know nothing about Eastern philosophy.
Man, well, they have this notion of what they call Brahman. So the yogis don't regard. They kind of see what maybe someone coming from Western religion might see as polytheism, but they don't really believe in many or multiple gods in that sense. They see them kind of as archetypes, to use a Jungian term, as facets of various aspects in nature, whereas the Brahman is not an entity. It's not some kind of anthropomorphic god, or even some kind of animal god like in Ganesh, where you have the elephant head, but it's more thought of as this kind of transcendent source that contains all the permutations and potential that can manifest in reality or a universe. And so what the Brahman does, it plays kind of an eternal game of hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
And so it acts the world as like in a play, so that it plays. It's the tree, it's you, it's me, and in the end, it wakes up to realize it's all things. It was always all things simultaneously, but there's a necessary ignorance that has to go into this interplay, so that because if you were omniscient in let's say any sense, intellectual, intuitive, then there would be no reason for me to speak. You would know everything I'm going to say. There would be no.
That's the whole thing. You would never have a conversation, right? Because
Yeah.
you know all things. I mean, the omnipotence of an omnipowerful, omniscient being, and all that. They kind of say that God knows all things that are knowable, and he also knows counterfactuals, which are things that are knowable but may not be manifested ontologically. Those are future contingencies.
Yes, kind of like a lot of people in Spinoza, they call him a pantheist, but I think a better term to express his point of view is probably panentheism. Because
panentheism is making a resurgence, but I don't know the distinction between panentheism and Spinoza's God. It seems to be the same thing.
Well, according to Spinoza, that the universe has many modes and attributes, some that are not even present in our universe. But let's say, for the sake of argument or sake of discussion, let's consider a big bounce model of the cosmology, where you have multiple universes that come and go. And one sort of manifestation or permutation may not appear in one universe, but it may appear in another. Nietzsche had this idea of the eternal return. A universe may play itself out in completely the same way as it had done in the past, but every time you approach it, it feels like the first time. Mm-hmm. So it never becomes boring. So in other words, the Brahmin when it dreams everything, it must necessarily have to forget that it's the Brahmin, that it is everything, in order to start over again.
Yeah. By the way, I meant pandeism, not panentheism. Pandeism reminds me of the Spinoza God. Some kind of, it is the universe because of the pandeism. It doesn't have any intentional states. It doesn't need to have intentional states.
Yeah.
Or it could have been the death of a deity. And so when you look at Spinoza's God, or you look at the God of philosophers, it's just basically the universe. It's just the natural order of things. There's no intentionality. So that reminds me of pandeism. Panentheism is basically more along the lines of you have the entire reality of the universe, and then God exceeds that beyond that measure. And so
what I think is going on in panentheism is that there is this transcendent source which contains all the possible permutations.
Yes.
And so the universes play out these permutations. Some of them may like notes on a piano. You don't play all the notes at once. You select your notes. And some universes may play a certain melody that where it ignores certain notes, whereas another universe may pick up a certain melody where the previous universe didn't play those notes. But nevertheless, the higher potential, the transcendent source contains all notes.
All notes, right? Just how they're organized.
Yes.
Yeah. But again, pandeism is still the universe is the same. The universe and God are synonymous terms, right? So let me ask you this. Because there's so many different versions, you've got pandeism, panentheism, pantheism, henotheism, monotheism, whatever you want to pick, whatever belief you have. Don't you think these are all ways that humans have tried to understand and apprehend the world they live in? Because if God existed, he could just tell somebody how it is, and yet nobody knows. This is when anybody ever says, "Oh, I know, pandeism is correct," or "I know that theism, is correct," or they're not expressing to me an actual statement of knowledge. They're expressing a claim to knowledge, because there's so many different. These are just hypotheticals. It's like, okay, if God exists, how do we try to apprehend him? Well, it could be that he's the universe. Okay, he could be greater than the universe. He could be separate, like a great demurs, like a theological, what's called theological personalism. All these different, but you know what? There's no way of knowing anything. These are all just people stumbling around in the dark going, this is how I think God may have be. But here's a more parsimonious solution. And I'm going to put my atheist hat on that I don't do often. But is it more parsimonious to say that all this is wasted effort trying to understand something that doesn't even exist?
Well, okay, I think I can address that. I really do think that all these terms that we develop in our language are, conceptions or ways to intellectualize what I think is an insight. The reason I invoke mysticism and mystical experience is because I don't think you can necessarily know intellectually. I think, yeah, the way we wordify things are just ways we try to express that understanding. But I don't know if you've ever taken psychedelics in your life, or if you ever engaged in any spiritual disciplines. But
no, I've self-induced lucid dreaming before. I've literally been able to induce a lucid dream more than once. I'd say five times in my life. And that's something that's not random. This is me going, I will put myself in a transcendental meditation state and have a lucid dream. And I was able to successfully do this at least 4 or 5 times. And I think I'm just going to say 5. I'm pretty sure it's 5 times.
Okay. Well, I've been lucid dreaming since I was a little kid, man.
Yeah.
And
can you do it can you actually induce it? Because the first time you actually induce a lucid dream, you're like, holy crap, this was not just me sleeping, having a random occurrence. This was me willfully making myself enter that meditation state. And it is surreal. It is absolutely surreal. It is next level. And this is why I think people try to explain it, because it's so realistic and so discordant from what we experience from everyday experience, that people want to try to attach to it some kind of supernatural causation, rather than maybe it's just a function of the brain. But I love lucid dreaming. I think lucid dreaming, I try to do every so often, or want to do every so often. It keeps me grounded, if that makes sense, because it is pure escapism.
It's interesting, but I would still argue that even in the lucid dream, you still have this interpretation inside the dream where you're a bodily entity roaming in an environment. You still have this subject-object dichotomy at play. And no matter how interesting,
but you can control the very fabric of the universe. You want something to appear, you can make it appear. You can will it into existence.
Oh no, yes, you can, depending on how skilled you are at lucid dreaming. Like I would have these dreams where I would make it a car appear, and I would jump in the car, but it wouldn't start. Or
that's a common problem. Like light switches don't work in lucid dreams for some reason. Cars may not work in lucid dreaming. Mirrors are trippier than hell in lucid dreaming.
Yeah, definitely. Or even try meditating in a lucid dream. That's one of the things I've been experimenting with lately.
Trying to get a lucid dream inside a lucid dream. That's inception.
So yeah. The way I define meditation is attempting to seize all thought, the cessation of volition, and to it's one thing I've been experimenting with my lucid dream, because every time I had a friend that whenever he would lucid dream, the first thing he would do is try to find the hottest chick in his dream and try to bang her.
Well, we all did that, but the problem with that is that every single time you do that, you wake up because your brain is having more chemicals and you're getting excited. We've all done that in lucid dreams.
Well,
right?
it depends. I mean, because I
don't do that any longer, because I like to experience the lucid dreams. The last one I had wasn't that long ago; it was a few weeks ago, and I swear to God, this was probably the longest one. It must have lasted 10 minutes, and I was enjoying every bit of it. And I'm like, I don't want to wake up. I mean, so I was like, nope.
No. Well, that's part of becoming a skilled lucid dreamer, is knowing how to keep yourself calm and not getting too excited. Otherwise, you will wake up.
Right.
And I don't know if you ever heard of Manuel Ferrara. He's a real famous porn star, but one time he was on Twitch talking about lucid dreams, and he's now a director, and he would have these lucid dreams where he think of this girl, bang the shit out of her, and then the next day wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to invite this lady onto, I'm going to direct a porn with her. And, he'd make it happen. But he was able to maintain lucidity while he was having this most extreme sex with her,
That's
So
cool. That's
yeah,
control. Yeah, that's control.
yeah, that's control right there.
Yeah.
And of course he's a porn star, so he does it often, and it may explain why he could do it better than most people who attempt that. But
let me ask you this then. Okay, so because this goes back to the DMT thing, because when I had that discussion about the DMT, I was asking about different ways of approaching how these things or why these things are the way they are. For example, lucid dreaming. I just gave examples of, for some reason in lucid dreams, light switches tend not to work. Mirrors seem distorted. Your face looks non-emotional or blank. You have no affect of expression really when you look into a mirror. It's very surreal. Cars may not start. These are all things that everybody seems to experience. So there's different views on this. One of them was called the neurotheological reductivism approach, or some people call it constructivism, but it's basically neurotheological reductivism. And this was based upon the DMT having these experiences of the mechanical elves. That the reason why we all have very similar experiences when you have hallucinogenics or you have lucid dreaming is that these are based upon brain chemistry. The fact that we all have a very almost identical type of brain chemistry, the physical aspects, for some reason, will translate into these similar experiences. Why they do, why light switches? What is it about our brain chemistry that says light switches don't work, or why is it we see mechanical elves on a MAO induced DMT trip? But
yeah, well, I mean, it's not. I mean, it is commonplace, but it's not.
It's a lot. It's more common. It's literally a test you can do for lucidity.
Yes, yeah, I would say that, but
well, that's pretty common.
It is common, but there are exceptions. And like, for instance, when I spoke to Tracy Harris one time, she said that she's like, she thought, okay, we have similar brains, therefore we're going to have similar psychedelic experiences. And I initially thought this too when I studied the neuroscience involving, mystical experience. But what I eventually came to is what a lot of the professionals in the research, hold to, which is, I don't know if you've heard of Bill Richards, Dr. Bill Richards, but it's very clear when you start looking into this research that they don't see it that way, that they see it more as a feature of consciousness itself. And this is very aligned with how the Buddhists saw it. That, for them, nirvana wasn't a phenomenon in the human beings on one planet. It was a phenomenon that could occur in any sentient being, no matter where they arise within the multiverse.
Yeah, and I do hold to a little bit of the constructivist view, but I think I hold to more what's called a contextualist view when it comes to that. The contextualist view is basically that we all have different cultures we're from, and we all have different experiences, but most of our experiences are very similar. And the light switch thing, the fear of the dark, is something that all humans have. And we've all seen movies where the light switch doesn't work, right? And so I think that is something, because it was a cultural thing of the fear of the dark and things not starting. It's culturally based. I tend to more of a contextual rather than a brain chemistry.
It could be, but I will attest that in my lucid dreaming experiences, I've never had that occur. I was able to hit light switches.
I have. Well, yeah, it's not 100%. I mean, but this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why I tend to the contextualist.
Maybe that's why I contend otherwise, because it's never been in my own experience, and I've had many lucid dreams, and that's never been the case with that.
The other approach, the essentialist approach, would be like the mechanical elves are real. They're actually an entity, and that the essentialist would actually say there's a real reason why these light switches don't work. I think that's too far of a position. Right. So I just think that it's culturally based. You may not have had those experiences. You may not have the fear of the dark. Other people do. And so they have more of a predilection to have the light switch not work in a lucid dream.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's akin to what I said about me making the car appear, but it wouldn't start. I think there's limitations in the mind. And I think it's to whatever degree a person could exceed and master those limitations, then they no longer are limitations. And I think it's just a matter of trying to let go. Like in that one scene in The Matrix where Morpheus is telling Neo to the jump program, to jump across to the building. And he's like, free my mind. And he ends up jumping off the building and he lands, all the way down into the ground. And I think it's something like, I think it works more something like that, in my opinion.
I'm sorry. What?
I don't know if you caught that. I don't know if you recall the jump program in the Matrix.
The dump program.
The jump, JUMP.
Jump program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where Morpheus is telling Neo to jump across to the other skyscraper.
Vaguely.
And he's setting
I watched the movies and I remember the mythology of it. I thought that
he's telling him, free your mind, and he's like, okay, free my mind, and he's getting ready, and everyone's waiting to see if he's going to do it, and he's like, and he doesn't. He ends up falling all the way down to the street level, but of course it's the program itself saves him. So when he hits the street, it kind of like does a stretchy kind of physics thing, and he bounces back up and he survives. He doesn't land and fall to his death. He survives the fall. But if you don't recall that scene, I think it's about trying to transcend the limitations in your mind, and I think we're so inured by living in this material world that when we have these type of lucid dreams, it's very hard to take control in that order, because I had many lucid dreams, but I've never been able to master them to any extent where I could, like for instance, one of the things I love to do is attempt to fly in my dreams. And I always pull off a kind of float. I don't know if you remember the game Second Life for the computer, where you can float about, your avatar can float around, and I was flying in that game. What I've always tried to attempt to do, I don't know if you follow Dragon Ball Z, where Goku or Vegeta, they jet off in this like burst. I've always wanted to attempt that. So anytime I became lucid, I could never pull that off. But I think it comes down to mastering, just trying to escape the limitations in your own mind. That's what it really.
I think that's right. I can fly in my dreams, but I don't get very high and very fast. But I'm able to like change scenery. Like for example, like let's say you're looking at something. I literally had one lucid dream where I just like waved my hand and just a whole new scene appeared. Right. In one scene, I'm on another planet. Another scene, I'm on a beach. Another scene, I'm on in a city. It's just,
wow.
Yeah,
with the wave of the hand.
With the wave of my with the wave of my hand. And I remember one scene. It was very, very vivid. I waved my hand and I was in this desert, and then I waved it again, and then I was in this like a ravine, and there was like millions of spiders and spider webs in this ravine, and I was like, "What the hell planet is this? Why would my mind create this?"
Yeah. That's insane. I've had something similar. I didn't wave my hand, but I would spin in spot. I would spin around in the spot.
It's performative. It's performative. You don't have to, right? I mean,
yeah.
But it's just, to me, it's performative. So I waved my hand, and then these images would just change a completely different scene. But like I said, these are real experiences. These are things that have actually happened, and I think that it just means that we really don't understand the great power that the mind has to do these things.
No, I agree. But you pour a lot of emphasis on lucid dreaming. You find them very fascinating.
I love it.
Find the reason I think I find mystical experiences, fascinating, even more so than the lucid dream for me, is that if you look into the studies, what they call complete mystical experience. All volunteers that meet the criteria for this will invariably describe something that is beyond simply, roaming. Like I said, being an entity roaming an environment, it seems to transcends this limitation to where people, when they come down from that, when the only words they can even put on it is like, it felt as though I was peering into a higher dimension.
Yeah,
where
I've heard that.
They were seeing all time coexisting simultaneously.
Well, don't you think that's where they get the whole transcendental meditation from? That they believe that their consciousness, actually has gone somewhere. I don't believe that your mind goes anywhere. I believe it's all internalized. But I do accept that why people would believe otherwise. It is a very, very powerful experience.
Yeah, well, when you say internalize, like the way the term non-duality, like you could say it's all subjective or it's all objective. It makes no discernible difference from the vantage point of that phenomenon.
No,
You know,
what I mean by is though you're not literally going to another plane. Your mind is fabricating all these things. But the question to me that I find the most interesting is, why does the mind have the ability to do that?
yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's like we're going into another plane. I don't think it's some kind of like, nether realm of Mortal Kombat or something like
So
that.
you don't take a literal
No.
it's
It
called
seems like
essentialist or perennialist approach is what it's called.
yes, and I happen to hold dear to that position. I consider myself a perennialist, and so
That would mean that you do think that these things do have some kind of ontology.
well, yes, I think there is some kind of metaphysical truth that's being discerned, and according to the perennialist view, they refer to it in such a way as metaphysical, so such that when they see the Christian undergoing the Holy Spirit, or the Buddhist undergoing nirvana, or the Hindu undergoing samadhi, these are one and the same thing. They're the same phenomenon in consciousness that has been going on.
Understood differently.
Yes, it's from the perennialist view, it's a phenomenon. Right. It's a single phenomenon in consciousness that's been going on for millennia.
Right, but I don't take the perennialist view. That's because that's an essentialist view, and I take the contextualist more view. But again, the interesting thing is, no matter what view you take, whatever philosophy you take on it, people are having these experiences that is undeniable, and I think that very fact makes it fascinating, because this is not something like a religious experience. This is not like this is something that this has been scientifically talked about. People understand that is a real thing that does happen, and so it's not the same thing as people saying, "Oh, I've talked to Jesus." No, it's not even.
Yeah, well, when you say contextualist, like I think the real issue that people don't grasp here, because you said you haven't really had a high dose psychedelic, is that these experiences occur on a spectrum. And on the lighter portion of that spectrum, the experiences can be very unique to the individual. So such that if you grew up with Christianity, you may see Christ on the cross. If you're Muslim,
but that's contextualism.
That's contextualism. But I think there's an area beyond that where when you go to these full blown, so-called complete mystical experiences, now you're at a point where it has nothing to do with your personal history. It has nothing to do with your cultural upbringing.
Right. Maybe.
Okay. That's the part maybe where we, might have a contention on. But I think when you go into these complete mystical experiences, this is an area where it becomes a kind of universal phenomenon in consciousness, where, if sentient beings, wherever they may arise, like the Buddhists might say, or, everyone may glimpse one and the same thing. Yes, it's going to be filtered through the unique personality of the individual when they come back down to the baseline of consciousness and attempt to explain it. And the only words that they've known, the only vocabulary that they've known in their life. But what they're ultimately trying to explain is something beyond concepts itself. And that's where the challenge.
I don't disagree with that. I think literally we're on the same page. We might have a minor explanations for things, or what our philosophy is, but as far as the actual experiences, I think we both exactly know what we're talking about.
Yeah, because I really think it does occur on a spectrum, and I think a lot of people who've never had this phenomenon, they don't understand that spectrum, and they end up conflating some of it. But that's why I've always man, I got to get Steve on and really dissect this stuff with him, man. And so I love talking to you about this stuff, man. And, of course, you're way more open-minded than Matt Dillahunty, because Matt Dillahunty would have hung up on my ass a long time ago, man. I would have been kicked out of the room.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you literally have known that I've looked into these topics because I did shows on them, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not just pulling it out my yin yang. But see, Matt balks at anything he doesn't understand.
Yeah, and he has the trigger finger on the hang up button.
Yeah, he just hand waves it away and foo-foos it because he doesn't want to ruin his image. He doesn't want to come across as unknowledgeable. He doesn't want to come across as he's not understanding something because he has that image to maintain. I don't give a crap about my image when it comes to that. If I don't know,
yeah, you're more concerned about truth, not maintaining an image.
Right. Have I ever tried to blow smoke up somebody's ass on a subject?
No, man. That's why I've always loved your stuff, man, and I still do, and I always subscribe to it. Man.
I'm very forthright in what I know and what I don't know. Always have been, and I do not every episode. Do not tell people my whole shtick is I'm a lay person who reads these things and has an interest in it, and if I can talk about it, anybody can. That's what I've always said from day one. I never portrayed to myself to have an expertise. When somebody says, "Oh, Steve's a fraud," what the hell they mean by that? It makes no sense.
No, man, I absolutely agree, man. Hey, I love you, brother. I'll end it right here, man. Please keep it up, brother, and I'll still listen, and hopefully you can do something with me on my channel whenever you get the chance.
Hit me up, man.
All right, badass, man. I'll see you, brother.
My roommate should be back soon. She's bringing me a Diet Coke, and I need a Diet Coke.
Badass, cool. Peace, brother. Hey, and lucid dreams, and a deja vu.
Yeah, you know what? I might. Well, I actually slept well last night, so I don't know if I can lucid dream tonight. Again, it's hit or miss when I can actually try to induce it, but certain things do help. Melatonin. Before you leave, I've got to tell you, man, 2 or 3 milligrams of melatonin every single time. I mean, I'm literally telling you, I think without fail, whenever I'm taking 2 or 3 milligrams, I have 3 milligram melatonins, and I've got a 10 milligram that I have to cut in half, which is 5, which is still a lot. 10 milligram is way too much. Don't take 10 milligrams. Those pills are way
melatonin and just staying healthy, man. You know, like.
But do you dream? Do you dream? Not so much lucid dream. It helps, but just regular dreams. I always dream with melatonin. Always.
Well, for me, it's just staying healthy. Like staying away from pharmaceuticals. I'll let melatonin go. I do take it myself, but I don't know what to extent. Like some of the off the counter stuff can be detrimental. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is healthy, but I think the best remedy for trying to attempt lucid dreaming is just being healthy, staying away from alcohol. Staying away from any type of detrimental drugs. If you want to lucid dream, then that's the best method to do it. Because I used to be an alcoholic when I was younger, and I'm still having trouble kicking the stuff. But every time I drink, man, I can never remember my dreams at all, whatsoever. It's like a rock, And so, like, what's the point if you can't remember it?
Yeah. No, we don't remember most of our dreams, anyways. But I mean. But if you think about it, as you get older, I just turned 54, as people know.
Nice.
I've had a lot of dreams in my life, and I remember a lot of my dreams. But what is it about certain dreams that I remember more than others? There are dreams I've had a kid that I'll never forget. There's dreams that even in my later life I will never forget because of the impact that they had. But why is it that there's only those certain? What is it about those dreams that we remember? Why do we remember anything? Why is it that our brains pick a particular snapshot of a situation that we remember?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that supposedly have, a total recall of their lives. I don't know how that's possible. But we especially in our childhood, I only have snapshots that I remember. Like
I think it is.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it is possible. I don't know if you've ever heard of Flo and Kay or Florence and I forgot. Florence and Catherine, they had this type of autism where they can recall everything they ever ate for all the way since they were back to 3 years old. Like,
wow.
And so I think that potential is there, but at the same time, it's not. It wasn't beneficial to them.
You think everything's stored in engrams? Do you think all our memories are still stored? Because I mean, I don't feel it's possible because of degradation.
At a high dose, you'll really see that yes, it is all there.
No, but we also have brain degradation. We have memory. The memories are stored chemically, and so
I don't think it's that.
Let me tell you.
Yeah,
recently, I've been trying to remember more stuff in my history because again, I know I've had loss of cognitive function. I recognize this, but I remember things. Sometimes I go, holy crap. I never knew I remembered that. I would remember things. I love that though, because it's like, wow, now I do remember that. But it's weird when you don't remember something. Like when I swear to God, dude, when I was there the other day, trying to remember my social security number, and I can remember the last 4, but the first 6 digits were utterly fucking blank to me. And yet I've had that number memorized since I was a kid. I know my driver's license number, my social security number. Those things have never been things that I've forgotten. I know them. Just like I've always known pi to
the back of your hand. Yeah.
Look, I'm not even looking anything up, but pi, I've always remember pi 3.14159265358979232. I memorized that in high school. Okay, so I've always had the ability to learn large amounts of information. In nuke school, you have to memorize an awful lot of stuff, and just a lot of it is rote memorization and regurgitation. But certain phone numbers, like the phone number that I had growing up, I never forgot. But sitting there, not being able to remember my social security number is a terrifying freaking thing because you're like, holy crap, this is me. This is my mind. How is it I cannot remember something so fundamental? And if you can't remember that, what's the likelihood I might forget my daughter one day?
Yeah. You don't, I mean, you don't have to be honest about this, but there isn't anything aside from melatonin, any type of like medication that a doctor tried to tell you to push on you or anything like that.
No, I'm not. I have got stuff going on, but I haven't been prescribed anything until.
Man, if there is some kind of pharmaceutical that they're trying to push on you, I would just give it up, man. Because like
I was put on Paxil back in the early 90s for a while, and it made me grind my teeth. And I asked the guy, and he said, "Well, that's not a side effect." I'm like, "The hell, it wasn't." I looked it up.
So they didn't know, man.
It was called Bruxum.
Yeah, we're guinea pigs for those kind of things.
And so I was like, and then after that, I was like, well, I don't have depression. My brother had depression, so I was like, for years, I don't have depression because I took the medication Paxil and they had Wellbutrin, and I think amitriptyline too, but that made me so tired. And I'm like, this is just them pushing off these pharmaceutical stuff that's not effective. It's not doing. It's making things worse.
Man. Can I ask? Did you know that?
So this is why I always said. But this is why I always said they misdiagnosed me because I don't have depression because the medication was crap. But a couple of years ago, things started changing, and I'm like, oh shit, you know what? I actually do have depression.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I know somebody's going to say, oh, Steve lied and said he didn't have depression. For years. Well, yeah, this is the reason behind it. I've always said my brother had depression. I know I had a genetic propensity for it.
Well, I mean, I believe you because I think if it wasn't the case, man, I think you'd be a lot more prolific in your work right now. And I know that's one.
I didn't strain for 5 months.
Yeah, it's one hindrance that can definitely hold you down. And I did want to ask you this. I know you're very familiar with Carl Jung and Freud. Did you know?
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with Jung and Freud. I don't study Jung at all.
Oh, really?
I'm Freud. This guy was weird, man.
Well, did you know that? I'm pretty sure you knew that they were best friends at one point, and
I thought they corresponded. I didn't know they actually like knew each.
Yeah, no, they were best friends. It's a very interesting story between the two. They would analyze each other's dreams.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. They did analyze.
Yeah, and it became apparent that Freud was messing around with Jung's wife and Jung found out by analyzing the dreams and certain elements that Freud was intentionally keeping out of telling him. And so Jung, in order to retaliate, he ended up sleeping with one of his favorite female patients that he was messing around with. The real interesting story between the two.
Yeah,
but what I was going to tell you was that Jung claimed that he could enter his dreams lucid. And a lot of his material that he came up with, all the archetypes and stuff, were directly derived from his lucid dreams.
Yeah, I know Jung had these types of archetypes, and I know that Freud had the id, the super id, and the ego.
Yeah, but Jung was attributing it a lot of his insight to the fact that he could enter his dreams.
I don't believe that though. I don't. Okay, so I had a friend, and by the way, Speed Hypnosis, Nyquil and Robitussin help too. They can do that too. I had a friend who she would go into these lucid states, and she would just talk to people, and the people she would talk to would be some people that she would recognize over and over again, right? There'd be continual people, like a second life kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
She actually believed that there were real people that she was talking to, because there was consistency there. I've been in dreams where I've talked to people, but it's never been the same person twice, except for my father.
I have a contender with that. I think if you're talking to someone and you don't realize, you're in a kind of semi-lucid state. You don't realize that all the people that you produce inside the dream are essentially you talking to yourself.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're mental constructs. I don't think they're actual agents have intentional beings that exist other than in my own mind. My mental, because like when I'm talking to my deceased father, I would be just chilling, talking to him like I would be anywhere else. And then I think to myself, you're no longer with us. But I'm like, okay, whatever, still cool, right?
Yeah, but you see, even accepting that to any degree would be a kind of a semi-lucid state, I think.
Well, that's when you're lucid. Yeah, when I have that happen, I'm like, okay, I'm clearly in a lucid state. I'm aware that I'm dreaming, but I'm okay with it because I like talking to my dad. But I mean, I remember one time I had a lucid dream, and it put me in this mall, and oh my God, the detail was amazing. And there was this, the archetypical Southern black woman of Georgia, sweet old lady, right? She was just sitting there chilling, and it was something like out of The Stand. You remember the movie The Stand or the book The Stand? There was the archetype, the good woman that was against Captain Trips. She was this old Southern black woman, the very wise. And I was fascinated, and I was just having a conversation with her, like the Oracle from the
Oracle from the Matrix. Yeah.
In fact, it could have been. It's just like that because the actress for the Oracle was two different actresses. Because the first one passed away, but that was like her. She was so wise and so amazing to talk to, and I was like, "This is great." But then I was thinking to myself, "I'm in a lucid dream. There's a Hot Topic type store." With these hot chicks, I'm gonna go over there instead. And then I obviously, woke up. but yeah,
she's gonna tell you what's really gonna bake your noodle later on is would you have dropped the vase if I hadn't said anything?
What?
It's a reference to the movie, but man, dude, I could talk to you forever, brother.
I appreciate it, man. So
I appreciate it. I would love to pick up on these topics a lot more.
I appreciate it. You make it sound like that I'm not a complete dumbass, and I like that because like I go to Jim Bob's thing, and oh my God, they're like, Steve, you're so stupid. You're just
no, man.
Okay, whatever. Think what you want. I mean, I don't take it personally, but I'm like, dude, I got people that I think are highly, highly educated, and they don't think I'm stupid. So it's like I don't
think you're stupid at all. I think if I hadn't had a mystical experience for myself, like full-blown mystical experience, I think my logic would be exactly how yours is. I think the only difference between you and I is that you haven't had this phenomenon occur. And what I would say is that, if you look into like the recruitment of how they get these volunteers, because they recruit these are ongoing studies at Johns Hopkins, and they're recruiting volunteers right now. You can go to the website and sign up if you wanted to. And they do accept volunteers between the ages of 25 and 75. You just told me you're in your 50s. So you're well within the, to be a candidate for one of these studies. And I can send you the link, man. And you
don't have
I don't know if you would ever be up for it, but I think your line of thinking would be that much more interesting, man, if you had this phenomenon. And are you talking
like a full mystical breakthrough?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, but I would have to do that in very controlled conditions, like with high.
That's what they have.
Yeah, I don't think I would probably piss my pants.
Man, well, I mean, they haven't had anyone piss their pants, but I
know what those experiences are supposed to be like. When you actually break through with taking what's called an MAO inhibitor, which makes the DMT process slower, so you can.
Johns Hopkins does psilocybin, so MIO would be unnecessary.
Yeah,
you're talking about ayahuasca.
I'm talking about DMT.
Yeah. DMT.
I think ayahuasca. I think it's the same principle because if not, your body.
No. I think you might have a misconception there. You can actually vape DMT without taking any MAO.
Yeah, but the problem is that it lasts for a very short period of time. Ayahuasca lasts a lot longer.
Yeah, it's like a slow release DMT trip.
Right,
it's like 10 hours versus 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't want that. But even then, 5 minutes seems like it's forever.
Yeah, it could seem like eternity. Yes.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I'm not into this ego death. I don't think I want to have an ego death. And
you don't want to have an ego death. Well, I mean, it's eventually going to hit you, man, on your deathbed. Why not experience it in the midst of life?
But at that point, it won't matter to me because I won't have any more thoughts.
Yeah, and
I've already accepted I'm going to die once. I mean, I already accepted that. That's a reality. Everybody has to deal with that. But after you die, I don't think there's anything past that, so I'm not going to be in any state of consciousness.
Sure, but I think this is the ultimate yearning for any philosopher to worth his salt, man. And I'm also,
I get it. No, I totally get it for an experience alone kind of thing. But I also believe that since we are only here ephemerally, since we are here temporarily, I think that we should be the best we can, and the people that use their life to cause harm to people, they are the evil. And so if there's a Christian God out there, or if there's any type of deity out there, if he can't evaluate my life and realize the kind of person I was, my morals, my beliefs, my helping of others, that's not a deity that's worth of praise anyways. And so I've actually had Christians tell me, look, they believe in more of a universal salvation, universalism. They also believe that if you die, you're going to have a chance to, Jesus would go, hey, look, you didn't accept me in life, but here's your last chance kind of stuff, which I think is fair. But the only people that actually like condemn the non-believer for like, you're going to hell are the ones that are absolutely idiots anyways. These are the ones that do have the flat earth level mentalities, the young earth creationist mentality. And so why would I want to believe anybody who I know is wrong on that aspect? If they're wrong on the fundamentals of reality, why would I trust them on anything theological?
Sure, but I mean, at the same time, man, the people who have done this throughout history, they do kind of become, a beacon of a high probity, of immense morality, saint, mystic.
Yeah, I can see why. I think that living a good life, the Epicurean type approach, makes sense to me.
Well, no, I mean, undergoing a full-blown mystical experience, like what I glimpsed in there. I mean, aside from glimpsing a perception that's beyond space and time, it's also filled with infinite and unconditional love. I
totally understand that, and I also think that, for example, in your tripping or whatever, even lucid dreams, I can see shapes and things of experiences that I cannot manifest consciously without being in those states. The mind is much more pure. I have no artistic capability. For example, my dad was an artist, drawing charcoal drawings, acrylics. I didn't inherit any of that. I can't draw a stick figure. I have no ability to have abstract reasoning when it comes to the arts. However, in those states, the things I see, mind blowing. They're what's the word? What's not feminine? Oh my god.
Transcendental.
No, what is it when you can't put it into words?
Ineffable.
Ineffable. Yeah, ineffable. See, I'm telling you, my brain's going. That's what I'm saying. Ineffable. I believe very strongly that my brain has the ability to do certain things, but consciously I can't. But in those other states, yes, you open up to a whole different level. And like I said, it is ineffable because I can't describe it, but I can see things my brain can produce that there's no way on a conscious level I can do it. But I know I have the ability because I can do it subconsciously.
Yeah, no, I think it's a potential in everyone. And, I think anyone who is able to glimpse it or access it somehow, they do become a moral paragon and, a righteous beacon.
You're just trying to turn me into a cult leader.
Or that, but I think that could be, somehow they sullied the vision, but I think people who really take it to heart and they take it seriously, they will become Christ-like. And that's why I was trying to tell you in the chat that this problem of evil, people, or why does evil exist? In that spiritual dimension, it doesn't. That's the thing. And I guess the whole point is to try to bring back that vision into the material world and try to become a beacon for that vision.
Yeah, well, I like to do without it. The people that have been around my channel know that I promote moral theories. I promote, like Chris left. When Chris left, he said, be good to each other. I believe that. I want to be known for being a good person, and yet I've been slandered and defamed and said horrible things about for how many years?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, how intrepid are you as a philosopher, man? How willing are you for? Are you?
Not. I'm not gonna. No, I'm not into the. I don't. I've had the opportunity to take psychedelics, psilocybin, and I haven't. So people have been trying to give me a microdose for years.
Well, maybe when you go on my channel, maybe I can convince you otherwise, man. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I'm just afraid I don't want to fry what little mind I've got left. Like I said, I've already had diminished cognitive functions, and so.
Yeah. Well, I really don't think it's. I think frying of the mind is metaphor. I really don't think it is a detriment to one's intellectual capacity, and if anything, they will enhance it, in my opinion.
Well, we'll see. But I'm going to go to bed here soon. I'm just my Diet Coke.
All right, man. I love the discussion, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. This was very long, 2 hours and 40 minutes. Wow, I usually only go about 90 minutes or 2 hours. But these late night hangouts can take a turn and talk about whatever they want. But I hope that people at least watch the first half of this, talking about the problem of evil and how I just don't think that crowd over there knew what they were doing or had any intention of learning about the topics properly. I'm still even talking to people on my YouTube page where they ask for the definition of evil, and even on Twitter they ask for the definition of evil and then just say, "Wow, that ain't the Christian." It has nothing to do with the Christian view. I think these people think that they can assail things that actual philosophers and experts have spent a lot of time and education dedicating themselves to work on, and so they're trying to take shortcuts. But this is the reason why I think people fall prey to young Earth creationism. People fall prey to young Earth. They want to take shortcuts. They want to feel smarter than other people. They want to feel like they know something that other people don't know, that they have inside knowledge of things that the average person doesn't have to make them feel special. And I really do believe that. And so I will continue to stand against flat Earth, young Earth creationism, and basically bad philosophy. So I hope you guys got something out of this. Hope this kind of explained a little bit more about the video I had the other day on Arguments Against Atheism series, and my Learning About Atheism series. It wasn't my best video, I don't think. I wasn't in the best headspace, but I tried. Much better headspace today. Much better headspace today. I also didn't have any coffee today, which is surprising. I wasn't as animated as I have been when I drink a lot of coffee, because I get super amped up. I just have to get through the day. I can't function without my coffee or Rockstar. But with that, guys, thanks for watching. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, share. Let me know your feedback. If you're a philosophy type person and this made sense to you, please let me know. I really do appreciate that feedback. If you're not a philosophy person, same thing. Let me know if it made sense to you, which even kind of means more, because if you're not a philosophy person and it made sense, then I feel like I accomplished something. And if you are a philosophy person and it made sense, it just makes me, a little more sure that I'm not just way out of left field, because listening to Christians and young Earth creationists and flat earthers, man, I'm telling you, man, I just think they're out to lunch. They're so far out of reality, and nobody in the academics, arena, nobody in philosophy is going to take any of them seriously. Nobody in the sciences take any of them seriously, and so they have to push back by arguing just by authority of themselves, or arguing by baculum, but believe like me or you're going to hell, or just mockery. and just try to defame the other person that they don't know what they're talking about, or they're the I've been accused of sophistry. I'm like, I keep telling people I do not engage in sophistry. I find sophistry to be useful under certain circumstances, but usually, whenever I haven't ever engaged in sophistry, I've let people know this is sophistic. This is I'm letting you know I'm putting myself in that mindset to be the sophist. I've never done it in actual dialogue because that's not how you engage honestly. But yeah, when people start telling me I'm dishonest in my argumentation, I really don't want to bother with them any longer. I just don't, because they're not engaging honestly. What they're just trying to do is say, I'm right, you're wrong by fiat. And look, people can say, well, you're hypocrites. You tell people all the time they're dishonest. Yes, but I can show where the dishonesty comes into play. If you think you've overcome these problems of evil, or you think that you've assailed the evolutionary theory of biology, then yeah, I'm going to put that as dishonest. Because you haven't done the due diligence, you haven't done the prerequisites, you haven't done the submissions of papers to assail them, you haven't done anything. Only in your own mind do you think you're smarter than actual scientists. Only in your own mind do you think that you've assailed the evolutionary theory, because you haven't. You have not. So with that, I'll leave you with that, and we'll take us out. Thanks, guys. Good night.